And a pleasant good afternoon to everyone out there in Irish Breakdown land. I am Vince D'Addario. It had me thrown too. Thank you for switching
live from lockup.
Yeah, live from lockup, babe. This is my 1 hour in the yard. I've decided to use it to talk some Notre Dame football. But this is our very first, because this is our first post-game week, right? So this is our very first upon further review show. And so what that means is Brian and I have had a chance to rewatch the game. Obviously, we had our opinions after the game from just a live look, right? But we've had a chance to kind of go back over the film, kind of with a coach's eye on things. And, for many plays, I literally watched the play 5 or 6 times and watched each lineman, or I watched the drop by the quarterback or whatever the case may be, right? That's how coaches watch film. And it's why I hate watching games live, to be perfectly honest with you, because I miss so much. I'm so used to watching it on film. So, so this is our upon further review.
Things that you thought you saw, like one thing, Vince, that I said during the game is, Kyle Hamilton had a big missed tackle on the 89-yard touchdown run. I was wrong on that. I went back and watched the film. Kyle was on the backside. That was DJ Brown that missed that play, right? So that's why we always want to have this follow-up show to sometimes we may see things differently. I may say, hey, guy played well, and then you watch film, like, hey, I don't really play that well. or vice versa. Yeah. And so that's what we're going to do. And now this is always going to be a more technical show, which means a lot of times it's going to be naturally more critical show, and critical simply from a critiquing standpoint, right? It's grades, it's some positives, some negatives. So just understand, if you're someone who's not familiar with us, this is going to be like we're in the coaching office with the players after the game. And that's always going to be more critical, because it's like, hey, this is good, but hey, we got to clean this up. Hey, this has to be corrected. So we'll try to balance it, but just understand there's going to be a natural not harshness, but more just a skeptical, critical eye being applied to the film. So just understand that's what the show is going to be about.
And reason being is that's how we would talk to our players. Like, hey, here's what you need to work on. Here's what you didn't do right. And of course, as you're going through film with your players, like, hey, you did a really good job on this. And we'll have that. But there's an eye towards the critical, because you want to, guys know what they do right. You don't necessarily have to pat them on the back.
You don't need to tell Kyle Hamilton, hey, by the way, good job on the 2 interceptions that no one else in the country can make.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So that's what this is, and that's how we're going to approach it as coaches.
And the best part about it, Vince, if I was sitting down in the film room with my players, the best thing I would say is, hey, fellas, there's a lot we got to clean up. We are so much better than what we showed Sunday night. But you know what? We got 1 win, 0 losses.
Absolutely.
That's at the end of the day the key. But now we get into the season. We got to clean some stuff up. We got the first game jitters out. We got the first game mistakes out. Now let's go on. But you went on the road against a quality team, not a great team, a quality team, and you made those mistakes. We saw stuff live, and we got the W. And we faced some adversity. We rallied back. Offensively, we had mistakes, but we did what we needed to do to get the job done. Defensively, we made a lot of mistakes the second half, but when the game was on the line, we stepped up and made plays. There's a lot of things to be encouraged by, and a lot of things that got to get cleaned up. But there's a lot of teams that you think Clemson would rather be in their shoes today or Notre Dame shoes? You think North Carolina would rather be in their shoes today or Notre Dame shoes? And that's where we're going to be at with this.
Absolutely. So, Brian, we may not talk special teams every week, but we do want to hit on special teams a little bit. And it may be the same thing every week that we have to say about special teams, because it just might be. But we wanted to start things off with special teams. The lack of a return game, I'll start there. I understand the punt return game. Okay, fine. The kick return game, you've got one of the most dynamic athletes back there returning kicks, right? He's the guy that's catching the ball. If you just want him to fair catch, then get him out of there. There's no point in having him there if that's your strategy. Every time he caught the ball, now, granted, I was watching the TV version, right? But every time he caught the ball on a kickoff, there wasn't a red jersey in the screen.
No.
And you're telling me that you're not better off letting Chris Tyree catch the ball and get a running start against guys that are coming in, in his general direction. I just feel like they're leaving a lot out on the field on the kick.
Yes, absolutely, Vince. And look, you say, well, hey, there's a chance we get pinned back. Okay, fine. That football's a game of chance. Every time you drop back and throw, there's a chance you get intercepted or strip sacked. Every time you run the ball, there's a chance you fumble or somebody comes through. I mean, there's always risk in football. of a mistake.
Yeah.
The incredibly soft nature in which they attack special teams is really disturbing.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got Kyron Williams returning punts and Chris Tyree returning kicks, and you had one attempt at a return. Now, the punts I got because Florida State did a good job where they were punting from, of getting down there, getting high punts. Part of that is because Notre Dame didn't heat the guy up.
Yeah,
Again,
exactly.
if you're not going to set up a return, and they didn't set up a return, then freaking go after the punt, right? I mean, it's one of those things that you just is. And then 2 of the kick returns were just made me want to just scream in the press box. Like the first one was they kick it right down the middle of the field.
Right, which is a huge no. Look,
is the last thing you want a kicker to do, Vince.
That's a no on freshman football.
Oh my gosh!
My kid is a kicker. People know this, right? And he kicks on the freshman football team. All the coaches tell him was like, man, I don't care how deep it is, but it's got to be towards the corner.
Yes.
It's got to be on the side, right? And whether they're pooching it or whether they're kicking it deep, it can't be in the middle. Yeah. And if it is, the other team's got to take advantage of that.
Right.
Oh
Has
my God.
to. And you've got a guy that runs a 4.3 returning right down the middle of the field, and he's fair catching. Now, for those that have a question, the way that Chris Tyree was fair catching those, it was clear to me that he was being told fair catch it if it's in bounds.
Because it was almost immediate.
Yeah.
Like he had his hand in the air.
There was no thought. Yeah. And then the last one was you've got 40 seconds left in the game. Your odds, one timeout, because on the first play of the second half, you had to waste a timeout because you weren't set up correctly, which drives me nuts. First play out of halftime.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to be too hard on Tommy Rees because after that, the offensive game plan in the third quarter was phenomenal, right? Yeah. But you can't waste those kind of timeouts.
Right.
And it hurt you late in the game. So
you knew it would. As soon as they took it, I was like,
you got a 4-3-1 guy. It's like, hey, take a chance.
Right.
And if you get pinned, you get pinned. I mean, if you lose some seconds, you lose some seconds. But you give your kicker. I couldn't believe Florida State kicked it in bounds. I just said just kick it out of bounds. I mean, I just said kick it as far as you can. I'm not giving. I don't care if you kick it out of bounds in bounds. I'd rather do that than give Chris Tyree a chance to return a kick.
Well, and their kid put a couple in the end zone. So I mean, their kid can put it in the end zone. That's what I would have said. Yeah, put it in the end zone.
I was blown away, and then to have him fair catch it. Oh, so we're going to go 75 yards and 40 seconds. Not 75 yards. I mean, you get in field goal range, so you've got to go at least 45 yards and 40 seconds. 35, yeah. Right? So that's what 15 plus 25. That's 40 yards.
40
yards. At least 40 yards. At least 40 yards.
Yeah.
At least 40, because that's a 52-yard field goal at that point.
Which is in his range. I mean, but yes,
harder. You don't want
the minimum,
right?
In my opinion.
So 40 yards and 40 seconds. I'm sorry. I'm giving Chris Tyree a chance to break that one.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry. So I just that's the thing, is I want to get that negativity out of the way now. And then you had a short punt by Jay Bramlett. I didn't think the coverage units were great, like they normally are. There was a lot of frustration for me from this game from the special teams. And now, having said that, when the game was on the line, the snap was good, the hold was good, the blocking was good, and the kick was true.
Yeah.
Right. And that's awesome. I mean, that's great. I just feel like overall, when you evaluate it from the beginning to the end of the game, you don't say, hey, well, you made the one play when it counted. Yes, you do. But you have to make sure you're doing a good job for the other 60 minutes too.
Right. Because their kid didn't. So, their kid missed the field goal in overtime.
Yeah. And I'll say, and that's what coaches get for playing those stupid mind games with field goals. Your kid made a 50-plus yard field goal, but you wanted to review the play and you wanted to, and all that. And then he has to sit there and think about it for a long review.
He basically iced his own kicker.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly. Mike Norvell did a really good job in this game. That was the one mistake. I didn't actually have a problem with him going for it on fourth down in his own territory. Notre Dame was working FSU right then. He kind of know, like, if we just give them the ball back here, they're going to go down and score. So might as well take a chance. And I also think that was a character building moment for his team. He's trying to still build a football team.
Sure.
Right. And I think that's that moment. Say, hey, I got faith in you guys. And they didn't get it done, and you correct the mistakes. But I think that was a sign to his team, hey, this is the level of faith I have in you guys, that I'm going to put you out there. And it's the faith I have in the defense that they can hold. Now, they didn't, right? But
yeah, and I get what you're saying.
Them for Mike.
It's an interesting point.
If Brian Kelly would have made the same call, I would have had a problem with it, right? Because you're at a different place on your but for Mike Norvell in that moment, game one of his second year, I had no problem with it. And his team reacted pretty well to that. I mean, Notre Dame goes down and scores 38, make it 38-20, and after the rest of the second half, Florida State controlled that football game.
Right. Yeah, they did. They did. You're
So,
right.
so for me, Vince, I look at it and say, you have to be better on special teams. And Mike Norvell made that mistake there. Notre Dame did a good job. They got it done. I think this is going to be huge for Jonathan Doerr's confidence level.
Game winner in game one.
I mean, on the road, in overtime, gets the game ball. That's going to be huge for him.
I didn't know that. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So that's good for him. So that part of special teams is good. But the kick return thing, like you said, just why waste your time with Chris Tyree being back there if you're just going to do that?
That's exactly my point. If you're just going to fair catch, put somebody back there who's going to catch it, and that's all. That's the end of the story. Don't put Chris Tyree back there and tease me like that. That's not fair. That's not cool.
Because Florida State scored, 6 times in this game, right? Like 5 touchdowns and a field goal plus a half, right? and Notre Dame had a grand total of 0 kick returns on 7 kickoffs. They weren't all kicked out of bounds.
No, meaning touchback. They weren't all touchbacks. Yeah, right. Yeah, that's frustrating as all get out. I mean, and at least Kyron Williams
had 3 touchbacks, by the way. 3 touchbacks is what. So
4 times were fair catching. But at least Kyron Williams, returned a couple punts.
He looked like he was being given the green light.
Yes,
to return kicks.
Absolutely agree. Yes. And he made some good decisions on when to fair catch. He did, and when he had space, he returned it.
And on the one where he fielded it at the 6 or 7, I actually was okay with that because it was hanging up so much. The cover has always been my stance on fair catching inside the 10. And I know a lot of special teams coaches feel differently. They're like, don't ever field it to
blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Right. For me, if you're having to wait on a ball inside the 10 and the coverage players are past you, that ball is going to have a good chance of getting pinned even deeper. I was cool with them fielding that. Right.
Yeah. They were behind him. They were
behind him, waiting on that ball to bounce, and then they were going to have a chance, especially with the new rule that the ball can actually cross the plane as long as, you know what I mean? Like it used to be where when the ball crossed the plane, it was dead no matter whether you tapped it back in or not. It did actually have to hit out of bounds.
So they can dive.
Yes. And tap it back in, which you couldn't do back in the day. Now you can. That's even more reason for me. I actually had no problem. Now, if you're catching it inside the 5, okay, dude, come on, But he caught a 6 or 7 because the difference is that's a difference when your quarterback can drop back quickly and not be in the end zone, and your quarterback's in the end zone the second he receives the ball in a shotgun.
And that's a big deal. It is a big deal because if there's one blown, block, you're done and it's a safety. So
and you'd have to have a pretty deep drop back from the 6-yard line for you to get called for holding in the end zone on a safety, or whether it be run game or whatever. So I had no problem with that. But to not give Chris Tyree the green light on kick returns was just a terrible decision.
Terrible.
Yeah. So, and I don't know whose decision that is. Is that Brian Kelly or Brian Polian? I don't know. But if I'm Brian Kelly, I'm having a conversation about that.
Yeah.
But the worst call on special teams that night was the no roughing penalty that was not called on Jay Bramlett. I mean, Brian Kelly kept saying he spun him all the way around. Now, sometimes guys fake it, but I saw someone on Twitter said, no, he didn't on that time.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Like saying that doesn't mean that but he got spun. He got hit. I mean, if I was doing teaching tape with officials on, hey, the difference between running and roughing, that's a roughing penalty. Right.
He made contact with both legs.
Yes.
And I know that the issue is
I don't care if he's pulling it. Right.
I get that. You don't want him on the plant leg. That's roughing.
But I don't want to hit a guy whose plant leg is on the ground either.
Right. Exactly. And spinning him around
doesn't have the other leg to brace himself.
Right. Yep.
So that was a horrible call. Horrible no call. Another in a long line of it should be.
It should be a reviewable thing.
And another in a long line of poor officiating calls. I don't want to talk too much about the officials, but I thought Notre Dame fans would appreciate this. So, we saw in 2014 that phantom, what I thought was a lot of people don't agree with me. I thought it was a terrible pass interference penalty. So that was pass interference. But this right here, that's the ball. That's this guy, a yard plus pass line of scrimmage. That's the tight end stalk blocking Justin Adamiola 4 yards down the field while the ball's in the air. Apparently, that's not offensive pass interference. But what happened for Notre Dame in 2014 is.
Right, exactly.
So if I'm Brian Kelly, I'm sending some strongly worded letters to the ACC officiating offices this week. There's no question about it.
Send that clip right there. You need to just say, hey, BK.
Yes. And that was like a 20-plus yard game that set up a touchdown. Yeah. They set up a touchdown that gave them the lead.
Well, and I always say, don't let the officials dictate the outcome of the game, right? And
Correct.
that you don't ever want to put yourself in that position. And Notre Dame almost did, because that lack of a call on the roughing changed the momentum of that game. Because if Notre Dame continued to hold on to the ball there, I don't think it's an overtime game. I really don't. And so I believe that changed the momentum completely in that game.
Yeah, so let's dive into some offense and defense, Vince. We're going to start with the offense. We're going to spend more time on the defense today, but I did want to get a little bit in the offense in. As I went back and watched the game, really looked through the play calling from Tommy Rees, I was as impressed by it on the review as I was live. Again, I'll say again, I hated the 3rd and 5 call. I got why he did it. I didn't like it. But other than that, I liked what he did. I liked how aggressive they were on momentum when there was needs for momentum changes back in their favor. So like after Florida State scored to take a 14-7 lead, Notre Dame went right on the attack and obviously executed well until that 3rd and 5 call, which then set up the goal, got the ball back, went down and scored again on that next drive. When Florida State took the 24-20 lead, Tommy Rees on the first play of the next series went deep to Kevin Austin, which I liked. I thought they were aggressive. They took 7 shots. The 8 shots technically, but I don't count the Hail Mary shots.
No, I wouldn't count that.
Of at least 20 yards down the field. They had another 4 shots that went at least 15. Part of the reason a couple of those didn't go 20 is because of how quickly Jack Cohn got the ball out. So that corner out to Michael Mayer went just under 20 because he got the ball out so quickly. And he threw it with a little bit more of on a line, because again, that's what you do. If the guy's open and you get it out there as quickly as possible, you don't lead him down the field.
Oh, you're talking about the touchdown pass?
The touchdown pass, yeah. When he was the blown coverage,
his eyes must have been like,
wow, yeah, this is going to be easy, right? Yeah. So I thought that was there was a lot of aggressiveness. Paul Olmstead with the super chat. Paul, thank you, Paul, very very much for that. So Paul Olmstead, the super chat, kicking things off on that. So Tom, again, back to Tom Rees. The other thing too is they didn't abandon the running game. Your 2 tailbacks still carried the ball 25 times in a game where you were getting no movement. They did a good job of, okay, if our running backs aren't getting the ball or aren't making plays in the run game, they had 10 catches. So your 2 running backs is what your position you're kind of building yourself around. They had 35 touches, right? That's kind of where you want to be. Kyron Williams had 24 touches. Chris Tyree had 11 touches. Again, that's kind of where you want to be, especially in a game where you're just not getting any movement in the run game. So I like the play calling. I thought 3rd down was good for the most part. I thought some of their 3rd down concepts early weren't great against what Florida State was doing, but overall, I thought that the play calling, in my opinion, was good. What's up, Vince? You had
one point I want to make about the play calling is it's very clear that Tommy Rees knows his team, in my opinion, because going forward in a deep way on 3rd and short and 2nd and short, 4th and short for on that touchdown pass, he knows this isn't last year's team, right? Last year's team's lining it up, punching you in the mouth, getting those 2 yards or whatever, right? He knows where the strengths are of this team, and I appreciate that, right? He's not trying to fit the square peg in a round hole situation, right? He knows what his strengths are, and he's calling plays in that manner. And I appreciate that from a young coordinator, knowing your team. I mean, that's huge. That's huge to me. And then eventually teams are going to be like, well, it's 3rd and 2. We can't really pack the box because they may go long here or they may do this. And so then that's going to open up maybe some of the run game and all that. So I really liked his aggressiveness and then knowing his team on some of those short yardage situations.
And I love the aggressiveness of it. Like you talked about the shots down the field. I mean, I'm trying to pull up Jack Cohn's. I have Jack Cohn's grades for the game. Obviously I gave him an A-, not a B-. There was enough in there. You know me, I'm a pretty hard grader. I don't hand out A's, and I don't know if I've maybe given like 1 A+ ever. I probably gave an A+ or 2 out during the 2017 season to some of the offensive linemen, but I don't have a ton. But I'm Jack Cohn's 3rd and 4th quarter stats in this game. So on 3rd and 4th downs in this game, Jack Cohn went 9 of 12 for 178 yards and 4 touchdowns on 3rd and 4th down, because the first touchdown was a 4th down to Michael Mayer.
Right.
Then there was a 3rd and short. It was 3rd and 1 or 2. That was the touchdown pass to Kevin Austin.
Yep.
The touchdown pass to Joe Wilkins was a 3rd down, 3rd medium, 3rd and 5. Right. But they were sort of in 2-down territory there. And so then, of course, you had another 3rd down where he read it out. They did a free release. Instead of having Kyron Williams wasting in the backfield pass blocking, he got Kyron Williams out in the flats. He dumps it off to Kyron. He makes a play. And that's what we've been asking for, Vince.
That's it. Yeah.
Use your playmakers. Like the throw to Joe Wilkins. That wasn't a great throw by Jack Cohn, but you gave your guy a chance to make a play, and he made a play.
Right.
And that's what you want. Getting the ball on check downs to Kyron Williams at 3-4 yards and letting him make people miss and picking up 15 yards. Those are the things you say. Get the ball down to your playmaker. Well, he didn't scramble. I'd rather him take a check down to Kyron Williams like that than to scramble.
Because I'd rather have Kyron Williams with the ball in his hands running around than Jack Cohn or Ian Book, if that's what we're comparing him to, right? That's what I want. Get the ball in the hands of your playmakers, and that's one of the things that we always thought that Jack Cohn was going to be good at.
We have a super chat from David Carpenter. Yeah. Awesome to be discussing actual games and good to get the W. Sarcasm font. Glad to see we are still fair catch you. It's even worse now because they're now fair catch you on kickoffs, I was laughing at Martin Demo with a little sarcasm for the show from responding to the post game show. Very well done, Martin. Very well done. But no, I thought the play calling was good. I thought Jack Cohn executed it relatively well. I think there were some times I thought he was a little too quick through his progressions. Early on, I think the pass rush not affected him like he wasn't willing to throw it, but I think it caused him to he felt he had to go through his reads a little quicker. For people that have said, well, he hit us through his first read all the time. Joe Wilkins was not his first read on the touchdown pass. If you go back and look, he's looking here, he doesn't see he sees the safety kind of go over and knows he's kind of got that backside. He takes the shot. He also had Lawrence Keys coming across the middle on that play too. I thought he ran the offense effectively. Couple things that I'm curious about. I'm curious about whether or not he's not allowed to throw RPOs or pull the ball on the backside of runs, or if he just made a decision not to. I counted about 9 RPOs in the game, all handoffs.
Right.
And it was all just that little look screen stuff. That's all they did. I don't know if there didn't seem to be other plays. Like I went and watched pass plays. The problem is sometimes the run blocking was so passive and catchy that it was like, I don't know if that's pass blocking or if that's run blocking.
That's a really good point.
Play action pass. So that was a little bit problematic, but there were times where it's like, look, this is a game of, there were times where they were cutting back and they were just backside guys just there crashing, and he wasn't pulling it. Not that he would have run for 100 yards, but maybe he can run 4 or 5, but I still think they need to do more things in the RPO game to protect that edge, especially with what we saw from Jack Cohn on Sunday night. He can get that ball out quickly. You've got guys can make plays. That's the next evolution that we need to see. And I'm curious to see kind of what that was. But there were times maybe he could have pulled the ball out and got it out. But overall, I thought he did good. I thought the running backs played well, Vince. I thought the receivers played very well. They were open a lot in the game. There was a play when Jack Cohn was sacked early where he was getting ready to look back to Kevin Austin, and he got drilled. Kevin Austin had broken free on a backside in cut, so he was a backside one-on-one. You read the front side, it was covered, and he was getting ready to come back, and bam, he gets sacked. Kevin Austin, I thought, had a really good game. Everything's kind of thrown off timing-wise. We're doing the upon further review on Tuesday instead of Sunday night because it was a night game. It was on Sunday. The travel was on Monday. It just was kind of a weird week. We'll normally do these on Sunday night, but my grades are going to be out later this week as well. But when you look at the receivers, I thought the separation was there. Braden Lindsey had multiple steps in the game. He actually had a couple steps on the guy on that underthrow from Jack Cohn.
And so did Kevin Austin too on the flea flicker. I mean, he was open.
He wasn't as open. I was watching that live because he did like a delay.
And he came from the backside.
And then he did like a kind of delay in the middle and then ran. He had a step. Jack needs to throw that ball over top and it's open. It should have been there, but he didn't have a big step. Travis J was recovering because of that, but it still should have been completed. So Braden Lindsey had another play in the middle where where Jack kind of went. I thought Jack was going to throw it, but he looked away from Braden because he saw the pressure coming before Braden got in there. But if he needs to just hit that and just let it rip, I think we'll see some of that down the road too. But that was another play where Braden Lindsey had beat a guy deep. That was good to see. was to see him getting separation on vertical routes. Because on the underthrow, he had put it like this: if DeShone Kaiser, and again, I thought Jack played a great game, but there's a difference in arm strength between Jack Cohn and DeShone Kaiser. DeShone Kaiser was the best deep ball thrower Notre Dame's had. I mean, for all the issues I had with DeShone Kaiser, he threw the best deep ball.
Yeah,
that's a touchdown to Braden Lindsey on that play. That's something Jack's going to have to learn. Hey, get that thing and let it rip. He took like 2 gather steps and tried to throw a deep ball to Braden Lindsey. You're not doing that.
You're right. You got to get it out quicker than that.
You got to get it out in the second half. He did. Yes. You know, he on the touch right. Exactly.
Yeah, and that's what I liked was that in the first half 2 underthrows. Right.
And that tells me his OC got in his ear at halftime too.
Yeah. And the second half, he got rid of that ball quicker, got it out in front, and allowed his guys to go make plays. So he's learning as he goes too. This was his first game. Look, you
and there's a difference in game speed and practice speed. You and I both know that.
You can throw as many balls as you want in fall camp and spring and whatever. It's completely different than when you're in a game because guess what? Your receivers are actually a little faster in a game.
Yeah.
You've got to get it out there quicker.
I'm going to interrupt you, Vince, because I want you to keep explaining this, but I want to do it in response to a super chat we got from J. Peth Martin. I'm sorry. I hope I'm saying that right. If I'm not, I apologize. But he said, were the underthrows due to arm strength or timing? And I would say, and I want to know if you agree with me, Vince, I thought the underthrows in the first half had to do with, number one, he doesn't have DeShone Kaiser's arm strength.
No.
But the other two is I thought he tried to get air on it. Or touch on it instead of just launching it. He was trying to arc it. He was trying to throw to Braden Lindsey the same way he made the throw to Kevin Austin, right? Touch air outside. When you've got and this is the thing, there's 2 types of deep balls. There's deep balls that are the quick hit it and go, which is that dropping it on the outside. Then there's a deep ball where you're getting deep and you're trying to throw it over the top of the defense. That J-Feth. Okay, thank you for clearing that up. It's J-Feth. So that one particular required more of the deep ball to Joseph Wilkins required more, put it on the back shoulder, which he did. He just needs to get it out about 4 inches more outside.
Yeah, right.
That throw to Braden requires you to throw it out and let him run underneath it.
Exactly.
So he was trying to place it on Braden, but Braden's too fast for that. You got to launch and let go. Now, the arm strength thing. So I have seen clips from practice where he has made that exact throw to Braden Lindsey and let him. So I've seen it. I think it was more of a getting used to Braden's game speed, as you know, is different.
Yep.
And the other part was he did a double gather. That was the other thing. He did a double gather on that play. You can't do that. You have
Which
to
means timing. Yeah.
So it's also a timing thing. So I think he's got the arm strength to make that throw better. He's not a guy that can make that throw with a double hitch and then go. He doesn't have that kind of arm. He's got to he's got to hit it and let it go. And it requires a different type of deep throw. He's capable of it. I've seen him do it at Wisconsin. I've seen him throw the ball further than that at Wisconsin. I've seen him throw the ball further than that in practice. He needs to be able to let it go. So I think it was a mistake more than it was an inability to do something. But he doesn't, like I said, he does not have DeShone Kaiser's arm strength. He doesn't have Everett Golson's arm strength. He's going to have to let that thing go. I don't think he can throw the ball as far as Ian Book could. This is the thing we always talk about with Ian Book.
Right.
It was never a lack of ability to throw the ball for Ian Book. It was a lack of willingness to throw the deep ball. Jack has the willingness. Now he's got to understand
we saw that
types of it. Right.
We saw that.
Threw 7 deep balls, not kind of Hail Mary. Threw 7 balls at least 20 yards. And 11, I counted 11 that went at least 15 yards.
Yeah, exactly.
Not counting the Hail Mary.
Right, yeah.
So a third of his passes basically were – a third of his non-screen passes were
deep balls.
Deep balls at least that went 15 yards down the field.
And that's the thing. It's like if I was answering this question, I would have said it's more about timing, but I think he fixed the timing in the second half, right? Because he had to get used to his guys and game speed, et cetera. And you're right. I think Tommy got in his ear a little bit and said, hey, those guys are there. They're there. You just got to get it up to them, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's just more timing and getting used to his guys. It's going to get better, which is is but it's going to get better.
Yep. And I thought, again, overall, I thought the receivers did really well. They were getting separation. Blocked okay, blocked okay, not great.
And they have a willingness to block downfield. Right. We saw that a few different times. So, I mean, I'm okay with that.
And there's
effort.
a question from Bruce Scher I want to ask to kind of get into it. It says, I couldn't watch the game live or in replay. Was Avery Davis not in the passing plan? He was. One thing Florida State was doing is Florida State was crowding crowding the line, right? And they were crowding the middle. And so they were basically trying to stretch all the runs outside for Notre Dame, which they did. And they wanted to run inside out, right, and use the sideline to their advantage. Well, that also took away a lot of the over-the-middle pass game stuff.
Right, the seam and all that stuff that we
There were also
about.
times that you could tell Jack wanted to look for the slots, but the pressure came and he couldn't. He had to check it down. And so Florida State basically said, we're going to dare you to beat us throwing the ball down the field. That was their game plan.
Right.
And Notre Dame said, okay.
And Brian, correct me if I'm wrong here, because you've been a passing game coordinator at the college level. So to me, in my experience, rare is it that the slot receiver is your number one target. It's like your first read. It depends on
it depends on the route concept, but I mean, Michael Mayer, a lot of times that he was catching the ball was doing it from as a slot guy, and he was part of. I mean, the thing people have to understand is you don't often have a primary read, meaning you're going to throw to the Z or the X. It's your primary read is reading the flat defender.
Right.
He's your primary read, and then that will determine whether you're going to throw the hitch or the smash or the corner on, for example. Right. And so it's not necessarily a primary read as this you right there. Now when you're playing man, a lot of times you'll read 1, 2, 3, 4 if it's man.
Right.
But a lot of time and so that also depends too. So like if you're running double slants, your read's going to be inside out. If you're running, hitches, it's going to be inside out. If you're going to be running outbreaking routes, it's outside in. You're going to read the go first and then the throw the out second, right? And so do I take the one-on-one shot or then do I read inside? So it just depends on the concepts being run. I felt like in this game, Florida State was basically saying, we're going to make you go, we're going to force everything to the perimeter and we're going to make you beat us down the field. And they didn't think Notre Dame could do that, and Notre Dame did that. And that was a big part of this game.
I think the Notre Dame offense sent a message to future opponents about that.
100%.
Because look, the way you beat Notre Dame in the past, and somebody, a Florida State fan, said that in our chat about a week ago. The way you beat Notre Dame is stop the pass or stop the run game, clog the middle. Yeah, absolutely.
In the past, sure.
Yeah, and Notre Dame made them pay.
And this is why it's a great thing that they were so aggressive down the field, Vince, is because now future opponents are going to have to respect that. Okay.
Exactly.
And now you're some of those crossing routes, those short routes are now going to have more room to work.
Yes.
And if they can add a few more RPOs into the run game, a few more creative RPOs into the run game, I think that too is going to have a greater impact on the success of the run game, but also the quick game. So I thought they did a good job of taking what was there. Sure. And what was there was shots, and they took shots. And there were some things we didn't see them going for verts a whole lot, but again, I kind of understand it when you consider they did. There was a lot of concepts that I know Notre Dame likes to run that we didn't see them call much of, if any, in this game, because I don't think there was a lot of confidence they could protect Jack Cohn on those type of reads. Yeah, I think, so that leads us to the final part. Oh, tight ends. We talked a lot about on Sunday night, Vince. Can't drop those balls. Tight end blocking is going to have to get a lot better. I thought George Takis had a good job blocking. Michael Mayer was pretty below average as a blocker in this game.
Almost looked like he didn't want
his angles are bad.
Contact and angles, and he was over his skis an awful lot from what I noticed, and that's disappointing.
Really poor run blocking performance from the tight end
because Michael Mayer's a big dude, big strong.
He was a better blocker in games last year than what he was against Florida State. Now again, one game. Right. One game.
Yep.
But in this one game, he did a poor job. Agreed. And so tight end position came up big for Notre Dame at times, but it also had some disappointing moments. And you expect better from this unit because that's the standard, right? Like 8 catches, 120. Yeah, it was great. But 2 times when there was opportunities to put Florida State away, you're up 7-0. You got a chance to catch a ball that gets you into field goal range, you drop it. You've got a chance to win the game at the end. Quarterback hits you right in the hands. I'm sorry. You got to catch that.
If you're an All-American,
because the 8 for 120 doesn't matter if you don't make that play when it matters. Right. Like, that was my thing about Will Fuller. Like, Will Fuller would drop balls. He never dropped a ball when the game was on the line, ever.
Yeah.
And that's what Michael Mayer's got. Sophomore, game 1.
Right.
We're just talking about this game. He's going to have a
We're
great
not throwing
year.
him under the bus. It's just the fact that he's got to
I just can't believe Florida State still thought it was a good idea to play him one-on-one.
All game. Just woo.
Yeah. Now they were playing some inside out stuff with linebackers on the quick stuff, but if he ever ran an out-breaking route, it was you got that guy. It was it. John A1.
Perfect segue.
Tuesday Irish breakdown. BK said the pass pro was good. Thoughts? I don't know what Brian Kelly's talking about.
Yeah, the pass pro for me, and I'll just lead this off, Brian. The pass pro for me, look, good pass pro, yes, you are giving ground a little bit, right? And you're trying to form that beautiful pocket for the quarterback to be able to step up in, et cetera, right? That pocket lasted milliseconds most of the time because the interior was getting pushed back so severely that there was no pocket. Now, there were a couple plays where Jack Cohn did have a pocket, and he made Florida State pay when he had a pocket. But more often than not, it was at the third down, and you asked me who gave up the pressure. It was early on in the game. It was the one that was thrown out, and it was short. It went to the feet of the receiver.
Right.
It's because he got run into by the guard because the guard got pushed back so far that he ran into the quarterback. Right. Mm-hmm. That happened more often than it didn't happen. And that was the biggest problem that I saw. The interior got manhandled in a rush situation. I mean, it was not good. It was not good. And then that just parlayed into the run game where there was just catching, and they were not establishing the line of scrimmage beyond the original line. They were stalemate at best.
Right. And the thing is, like, there was technical problems I saw. Like at right tackle, there were times where Josh Lugg was getting so deep into his pass pro, it almost looked like he was backpedaling, and that allowed them to just kind of push him back. That I thought was a technical problem that you say, well, that's not what Josh Lugg did 2 years ago when he started at right tackle. They were giving up way too much ground there. I thought that was problematic. I thought there was a lot of miscommunications, which those are the things, like the first pressure of the game, Josh Lugg's outside and Kane Madden steps inside thinking that he's going to have help from Josh Lugg. I don't know why he thought that, because Josh Lugg had a guy on his outside and the guy just runs through. That's the kind of stuff I'm okay with. And I'm not okay with it, meaning as a coach, I'm going to be ticked. But like, that's the kind of thing you expect from a line that has 4 new starters in it, right? Like, I can live with that. You can correct, hey, look, you got to know this. You got to have some awareness, and those aren't the mistakes that Kane Madden made very often at Marshall. So again, I'm going to chalk that up to first game, new players, new system. That stuff's going to get cleaned up pretty quickly. Michael Carmody just turning a guy loose on the outside because he's stepping down inside. I'm going to chalk that up to first game mistake, right? But the problem was, I thought the tackles other than the mistakes were okay. I thought Blake Fisher did his job, wasn't overly impressive in doing it, but wasn't bad. Michael Carmody, outside of the one mistake, wasn't overly impressive doing his job, but he wasn't bad. The guards were bad in this game. I mean, Pro Football Focus has, which their grades are hilarious. That Jack Cohn is the 46th best quarterback in the country on Saturday.
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not. Oh. But they had Kane Madden giving up 4 pressures. I had him giving up 4 pressures as well. I had them giving up more pressures than Pro Football Focus did as a whole. But I thought that when you look at this, there was also times where they were just getting pushed back, where that's not a pressure. But as a quarterback, it gets you a little bit like, okay, if I throw this, am I going to hit this guy in the helmet?
Because they're in your lap. I mean, that's a problem.
Right. So there was too much of that. That was a concern. And then the run game, and as we kind of move on to the run game, it was just catching all night long. And Vince, you had talked about during the game where you talked about the Michael Carmody where he took Jermaine Johnson and drove him into the end zone. If you go watch that play again, and I know you did, I'm sure you noticed this too. At the snap, he just stood up and caught him.
Yeah.
But Michael's so strong that he then drove him into the end zone.
Take it over.
But he just stood up and caught him.
And see that's
the goal line.
That's elementary technique stuff that we teach 14-year-olds in high school. Like, fire out.
The one guy that did a good job firing out in the run game was Kane Madden.
That's his thing. Right. But that's his thing, right?
His technique was sloppy, but he came off hard. Yeah. And on that touchdown drive, he came off and drilled a guy, and the ball didn't go behind him, but that's not on him. But he came off, and he had some nice short yardage pushes. The rest of the line, a lot of catching. A lot of catching in the run game. I mean, there was blown assignments, on the jet sweep to Chris Tyree. I mean, Jermaine Johnson just doesn't get touched. To the call side, just doesn't get touched. I don't know who was supposed to block him. I don't know if it was a tight end thing, O-line thing. There was a play where they're running inside zone, or they're running a sweep play, and Josh Lugg I think it was a sweep. No, it was a zone play because it was supposed to go inside. Josh Lugg just turns inside and just catches the guy 2 yards down behind the line of scrimmage. I mean, Vince, I stopped the tape so many times where they were engaged with the offense, with the defensive lineman from Florida State on the Notre Dame side of the ball.
Correct.
Right. Back.
That's why I say the best they did was a stalemate.
Right.
And that's not okay.
For the most part. There was a couple snaps here and there, but I mean, your longest run of the game was on a draw on second and long.
When you're supposed to let them come in.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Kind of the point. So that was what we said all summer was, look, I can live with the mistakes of the opener. It's going to happen. And we saw those, right? Those got to get cleaned up. But you kind of, you expect that in game one with a bunch of new dudes playing together. The concern was always going to be, are they going to get back to catching? Or are they going to be physical? Now, I'm not saying this is how they're going to be for the rest of the year because they were the same way early in 2018.
That's true.
2018 against Michigan, a lot of catching. They were tough, but they were catching. And then they weren't good in the next week against Ball State, or was it Vanderbilt in week 2 or Ball State in week 2?
They weren't good against Ball State. That's all.
Right. and then Vanderbilt. I think they had Ball State in week 2. I always get those two games backwards. Yeah, they had Ball State in week 2, and the offensive line was terrible. They got a little better against Vanderbilt. If you remember, Tony Jones had a good day that day. They ran for 200 yards that game. Then against Wake Forest, the offensive line was really good, and they were pushing Wake Forest around. Had 200, over 200 yards against Vandy, 200 yards against Wake Forest, 200 yards against Stanford. By game 5 against Stanford, they were blowing Stanford up. Right. So they progressed. Now they regressed after that, but that was because bars went down.
Sure.
And he was your best lineman by far at that point in time in the season. So it was understandable. So we need to, and that was with Jeff Quinn, right? That was first year Jeff Quinn. So we're going to need to see that move forward because there's 2 reasons why we could have seen catching in the opener. Number 1 is he's not teaching them to fire off the ball. That could be it. Number 2 is because there's so much thinking going on in game 1, guys working together, they're not as aggressive.
Sure.
That's what happened in 2018 in the first 2 games. A lot of thinking, a lot of mistakes. As they started to clean that up later in the year, game 3, game 4, game 5, they got a lot better. So I'm going to have my eye on that, right? Because again, it is the opener. The more you think, the less physical you're going to be. We've said that. We've said that a million times. So that's something I'm going to be looking for here, Vince.
Absolutely.
I want to get to the defense because I know you're on a bit of a time. We're kind of getting down when you got to bail. So let's talk, Vince, about the defense. Just overall, big picture. What are your thoughts coming out of watching it again from the defense? Well,
it's really a tale of 2 halves. And I want to put to bed we talked about this on what Sunday morning. What is it? Monday morning.
Still Sunday night, right?
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit. Everybody has their knickers in a bunch about the 3 front, in the second half, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The first possession of the game, Notre Dame was in a 3 front, and they lived in the backfield, and they did a great job against Florida State's offense, right? They were getting pressure. They were making the quarterback run around like a crazy person. He didn't know, which end was up, and they were in a 3 front, right? So it's not the front that was the problem, okay? And let me back up again. The first half, I thought Notre Dame was aggressive. I thought they did pretty well. Yes, there were some tackling issues at times, but they did a great job of getting pressure in the backfield and not allowing Florida State to do what they wanted to do. It was great. Second half obviously was a different story. I think you can blame some of it on fatigue. I think you can blame some of it on the rotation that they had, but the tackling wasn't good and the contain wasn't good. Those were the 2 issues that I had in the second half, tackling and contain. And I both of those things are very, very correctable. I don't really have a huge issue with it. It's amazing the vitriol that Coach Freeman is taking, the complete opposite of what it was.
Well, that was to be expected by you and I. I mean, a week ago, he's the next head coach of Notre Dame.
Right
now, he's Brian Van Gorder. That's just the nature of fans, and I love that passion because that's why there's 400 people on our stream right now, and I love y'all for that. So let's talk. I'm going to disagree with you a little bit, Vince.
Okay,
because if you go look the difference that I have is I don't have a problem with the 3-man front. I like that for flexibility. They had some really weird alignments on that first drive that Florida State wasn't prepared for. I like the mix-up. I'm okay at times using Isaiah Foskey off the ball. I'm okay with that. The issue that I had is after they went up 38-20, which came after a drive where they stopped Florida State. They were up 31-20. They came out, forced a 3-and-out. Florida State actually goes for it on 4th down, so it's a 4-and-out. Notre Dame was in a 4-man front that whole time. After that, they went almost exclusively to 3-man fronts.
There was no variation.
The problem I have.
Agreed.
Yes. And it was very much you went away from what worked. So as I'm watching, watching these drives and I'm making notes, I'm not seeing the pressures as much. And people say you went to they didn't go to prevent. They just weren't as aggressive. Mm-hmm. And he went away from who he is. I'm a believer that when it's 38-20, they got to pass now. Pin your freaking ears back and go at them. Mm-hmm. That's the mistake I think Coach Freeman made. It wasn't necessarily going to 3-4. It was, hey, let's attack. Let's pin our ears back and attack. Let's get this ball back to our offense right now, and let's put this baby away. Mm-hmm. Right? Let's put the women and children in bed and go looking for dinner.
Ooh, very good. The program.
There you go.
I got you.
So that was sort of my issue, Vince. It's not the 3. So I'm going to somewhat disagree with you. Your point is accurate that the 3-down was effective at times. It's more of it's effective as a change-up. This is still a team, and here's my point. This is still a team where your best position group on defense is your line.
And taking one of those guys and taking them off is
you're dropping them back.
Sure.
That is my issue.
And they weren't in a prevent per se because like what you said, because a prevent you've got 4 guys deep, you've got everybody backing up at the snap. Right. I mean that wasn't the case.
But I get the intent by what people are saying. Yes.
It was conservative play calling. It's like taking your foot off the gas offensively and just running between the tackles. Right. That's akin to what it was, and I do have a problem with that. And that is the coordinator. I mean, he's the one calling the plays. But maybe did Brian Kelly say, "Hey, man, let's take our foot off the gas. Let's just not make mistakes." Blah 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 blah. Maybe, but I think the buck stops with the defensive coordinator. Right. Now, do I think that it's going to change? I think that's the key to me. Mm-hmm. Do I think that hey, man, we can't really do this. We're going to fix some of our substitution patterns. We're going to not be as.
And that's what we didn't see.
That agreed, and that's where I think that. We're going to learn a lot next week and the week after to see if that changes. If that changes, then game 1's an anomaly, right? And I don't have a problem with that. If it doesn't, then it's a bigger issue.
Yeah, like I'm watching a play now, Vince. I got the video going, and they're in a 3-down, and they got one of their Vipers. I can't tell if it's Adam Yola or if it's Foskey.
Okay.
And it's 2nd and 7, and there's 5 guys in the box. They've got, it looks like 3 safeties in the game. You've got your rover outside. So it looks like a 4-2 personnel, but you've got your Viper back. And you're asking your Viper to basically read and flow like a mic. And lo and behold, guess what? He doesn't do it. And
right.
So, and that wasn't that to me. You're just letting them run. You're letting them gas you. 18 points in the 3rd quarter against a Power 5 team is not a big enough lead to take your foot off the gas. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The reason I don't think this is a Marcus Freeman thing only is because this is something we've seen in the past. And we saw it happen on both sides of the ball because the offense went away from what got them the 38-20 lead as well. We didn't see them attacking downfield anymore. And so to me, that's why I say this is a Brian Kelly thing more than a Marcus Freeman thing. And Brian Kelly's gonna have to learn you've got to teach your team the killer instinct first, then you pull back in these games.
Right.
And so that to me, so that's part Brian Kelly, but also part Marcus Freeman, because as you said, he didn't make the adjustments he needed to make. I thought there were some technical issues wrong and some schematic flaws against the run game too. And this also reared its head in the first half. They weren't setting the edge effectively. They were allowing Florida State to seal them inside a lot. And so they were getting their pullers outside with 1 linebacker against 2 pullers because they were basically pinning the Vipers and the 3 techniques inside. And the pullers were able to get outside, and there just weren't enough bodies out there to take them on. That's something. So I don't know if that was a scheme issue, or if that was the ends not setting the edge effectively. It looked to me, because it happened multiple times with different players, that it was a scheme problem. That's going to have to get corrected because you're going to have to get your safeties more involved downhill to do that. in my opinion. I would like to see them kind of use the Vipers a little bit more to set that hard edge and force the inside runs and then let the linebacker scrape and flow. Because what was happening is that backside Will or Mike, depending on which way they went, was basically taken out of the play. Because now the ball's going outside. He's going to have to get all the way across. He's now not part of the run defense. And so the Mike or the Will, the play side linebacker would flow and take out the guard. But then that there was no safety in the picture, and then the Will's coming from so far deep because you spilled it. The Will can't make that play against athletic running backs like Florida State had. So I thought that was a schematic problem, and I'm going to have some stuff on this in my video breakdown, which is going to be available to Irish Breakdown members only tomorrow, where I'm going to show some of this on film. But I thought that was an issue too that needs to be addressed. But again, that's one of those things where Florida State was also executing well. I thought their line blocked well in the run game. I was a little disappointed at times Notre Dame got pushed off the ball by guys that shouldn't have. I thought at times they went like wholesale number 2 defensive line substitutions on the first 89-yard touchdown run. You had 3 starters on the field. 3. And 2 of them were DBs.
Let's say Kyle Hamilton was one of them.
Yeah, you had Hart. 3. You had Kyle Hamilton. You had Cam Hart, and I think maybe one of the corners.
Okay.
I'd have to go back and look. Maybe a linebacker, but you had no defensive lineman on the field.
Right.
On the second touchdown play, you had like 4 or 5 starters on the field, but the 4 of them were DBs. So you had all but one of your starting front 7 guys out. You've got to do more mixing. And this is one thing that I thought Notre Dame did a really good job of under Clark Lee is they'd start the game off with their starting D-line. But then after that, you'd have the first and second team tackles would be together. So like the first team nose would be the number 2-3 technique, and then the number 1-3 technique would be with the number 2 nose. And then they'd kind of mix and match the ends in a little bit different. They need to rethink that strategy a little bit.
I agree.
And I have no issue with getting your second team defensive line in the game.
Well, me neither.
Zero issue with that.
Because they're good. They're really good. But
it's just you need to put them in together a little bit more.
They're second team for a reason. There's better guys ahead of them. So, exactly.
Right. Like some of these numbers that we saw from rotation, I loved. I mean, you had Howard Cross getting 35 snaps. Heinisch only had 45. Adamiola had 54. Foskey had 49. Myron Tungavaloa had 54. Justin Adamiola had 28. So I liked the rotation. I thought that I'd like to see a little bit more of Lacey and Mills. I thought Mills was really good when he was in there. I'd like to see him get a little bit more action. I'd like to, and there was one time, Vince, they went nickel and they had Jason Adamiola, Myron Tungavaloa, and not Kurt Heinisch. It was another defense, maybe Howard Cross, all in the game together.
Yeah.
That didn't make sense to me. You have 3 defensive tackles basically in the game together.
And Jason was playing on the left side of the defense. He was the edge.
He was on the edge.
Right.
Yeah. That didn't make sense to me. And of course they didn't get any pressure on the quarterback. That was on the touchdown pass where Houston Griffith got beat.
Oh, that's right.
That's what the play was. So it's like, well, yeah, you didn't get a pass rush. Well, no kidding. You had 3 defensive tackles on the field.
Right.
Basically.
Exactly. What are you expecting? I mean,
So I didn't quite understand that. So there were some things like that. And again, it's game 1 for the coaches too. All right. This is Marcus Freeman's first game with these players.
Right. And they're trying to figure out what those combinations are that work. And that happens in game. Well, you throw some stuff and it's like throwing the spaghetti against the wall, seeing if it sticks. There's some things you're going to throw out there and say, okay, can these guys play together effectively? Well, okay, no, they can't. So, let's get some guys in there that can and the different combinations. So you're right. I'm going to give them a bit of a pass on the substitution patterns,
but just patient with it. Let's see how it evolves. And that's going to be the thing is how do they do in games 2 and 3 and 4 and 5? And that's true for anybody. I mean, yes, it's fine to say it's okay making mistakes, but then it's like, okay, but you can't keep making those, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's where we're going to continue to what we're going to learn more. We're going to learn a lot about Marcus Freeman this year. Good and what some things he's going to have to work on. No coach is perfect. We're going to learn that, right? And he's still learning about his team. And so next week will be an opportunity to do that on a short week, which is going to be very interesting.
Yeah,
linebacker-wise, I thought Drew White had a very good game. Yeah. I thought J.D. Bertrand was solid. Mm-hmm. He had some areas where he looked like maybe wasn't sure what he was doing, but he had some other good moments. He was
who I thought he was.
He pursued a couple of times. He was very good in the run game. Had 11 tackles, which means in one game He's 3 tackles away from what Shane Simon had in 11 games last year. Okay, so that's not a shot on Shane. That's say, hey, I'll take a guy playing Will that needs to clean some stuff up that had 11 tackles.
That has production.
Because what if they always said he's always around the ball? He was around the ball. Now he's got to clean some stuff up. Jack Kaiser, they basically avoided him the whole night. I don't know if that was the plan that hey, let's avoid Jack Kaiser. It just the ball was never really near him.
Yeah.
I thought Isaiah Pryor was very active as a pass rusher and a run defender, but his coverage struggled. I thought the second team linebackers, including Will Bauer, had some really nice pass rushes, but as a run defender, he was not really there, and as getting into coverage, he was not there. And then Shane Simon obviously had his woes. So I thought linebacker play was a little inconsistent. I thought they were put in some really bad spots in the second half, where they were just because they weren't the second half. I'm watching this play now. The linebackers are 5 yards off the ball waiting.
Right.
I'm not having Drew White and J.D. Bertrand, who are both way in the 220s, sitting back there taking on guards.
Exactly.
That's not a Drew White, J.D. Bertrand problem. That's a defensive coaching staff problem.
You have to move them. You have to bring them downhill. You have to have them on the move because you're right. If they're catching a 320-pound guard, they're going to lose.
They're not manti.
Right. You're going to lose.
Right.
And I don't like them being that far off the line of scrimmage either. So that was almost like a prevent situation. They were that far back.
That's where I think people think, because it wasn't a prevent. It's just you lost your aggressiveness.
Yeah.
And so this is in the third quarter. It wasn't like they went up 38-20 with like 8 minutes in the fourth quarter. That I would have understood what they did if it was later in the game, because make Florida State go on a drive. I'm okay with that, right, Vince? I mean, make Florida State put a longer drive together. I mean, the score, the drive where Florida State went and made it 38-28, it was 15 plays, 75 yards, took almost 6 minutes off the clock. You do that in the fourth quarter, game over. They did this in the third quarter because Florida State, you know what I mean? Like Florida State scored with 13:42 left in the fourth quarter. That I'm watching that same drive now, and there's 3:37 left in the third quarter on that drive. Right? You do that a series later, and it's okay, cool. Because now it's 38-20 in the fourth quarter. There's not enough possessions, enough time to do that. You know what I mean? I think Vince, we're having a little technical problem. So anyway, that's where I'm at with this, with the defenses. I just felt like the timing of it was a mistake. I thought they should have gone to this a lot later. Secondary wise, I thought if Vince comes back, we'll try to get some thoughts on the secondary from him before he has to leave to go back to class. But secondary wise, I thought that it was a little spotty. I thought at times the secondary was good in the run game. At times they were off. I thought Houston Griffith had a really rough coverage play, but other than that was solid. But you can't make those kind of technical mistakes that get you beat. He's going to have to fix that. I thought Kyle Hamilton had some great plays. There was one mistake I thought he made that when I went back and watched the film, it wasn't him, but there were still some issues that he had. And when you look at he kind of allowed a guy to get out in coverage. Sorry, I'm trying to help Vince with his issues. There were times when I thought that he just got a little too aggressive. He got beat on a corner route. So there's some things even that great All-American has to clean up, which is it's going to happen. It's first game type of stuff. I thought Cam Hart played pretty well in his first game, got a little winded in the fourth quarter. Clearly he's going to have to kind of push through that. He got a little sloppy with his technique in the fourth quarter, but DJ Brown, he was the guy that whiffed on that long touchdown. You can't be on the field and miss that kind of play. I mean, that's the difference between a 5-yard gain and an 89-yard touchdown when the other team's backed up at their own 11. You can't make that kind of mistake. You can do that against Florida State and still win the game. You do that against a team that's better, and you're going to lose. And that's the thing that we have to look at and say, hey, look, that's the stuff you're going to have to clean up. And I thought Clarence Lewis had a solid game. Florida State hardly attacked outside at all. And when they did, it was against the safeties, which I thought was a good game plan. Attack the safeties. I thought the coverage from the linebackers was a little spotty. I thought that the run defense from the safety position was mostly good, but when they made mistakes, they were big mistakes. So those are some of my thoughts from the Notre Dame defense. Again, at times they were brilliant. And I think when in the second half, when they were in 4-down fronts, they were more effective. So I think the 3-down needs to be a thing where it is a wrinkle, it is a change up, it is something that gets the offense on their heels with what are they showing. At times they had 2 rovers on the field together. I'm okay with all that. The problem, however, is that when it became your base and then you backed off your pressures. Again, so I would argue that, yes, I didn't like the 3-down front late simply because you didn't always have your best players on the field. And then when you did have Foskey back, you weren't turning them loose. Guy had 2 sacks in the first half and you just had him sitting back. I'm a believer that you pin people and you go after them. And we didn't see that from them. So end of the day, there were some schematic issues that need to be addressed, and there was a lot of technical mistakes. The tackling, to me, especially the second half, was due to, I think, guys being tired. I think that was part of it. And they didn't push through the fatigue like they need to. And that's something that they're going to have to learn. And I also thought part of it was just not taking great angles to the ball. Sometimes, they were a little out of control getting to the ball, which allowed the Florida State guys to make a miss. And I thought they were allowing themselves to get sealed inside a little too soon. Whether that was too easily, or whether that was the players, or whether that was a scheme, remains to be seen. But at the end of the day, they did what they needed to do. I mean, you go to the fourth quarter and you step up, and Florida State's got a chance to win the game, and you did what you needed to do to get the stop. And I thought it was interesting that Florida State took the ball first, which it made sense that they took the ball first. Actually, I might have been mistaken on that. I thought that they chose to take the ball, but I could be wrong on that. But, they got the ball. Defense had a chance to come up with a stop, and that's what they did. They made the stop. And so you say what you want about it, that tells me something about this defense. When you can struggle the way that they did, that, and then come out that second half, or that overtime, and have a chance to make a play, that to me, that, like I said, that showed me something. So I liked where they're at. And again, part of the situation is Florida State tried to go at Notre Dame with the run game. They were in their 4-down looks. They were more aggressive. On the second down run, I'm watching now, they brought a corner fire, expecting run. Linebackers were back to being downhill, back to making plays. And that's what this team can do, is let this team run, use their speed to your advantage. And I think that's the key for the Notre Dame defense. So Ashley Hill with the super chat. Thank you for the super chat, Ashley. I appreciate that. Okay, so let's before we get out of here, so obviously we're bumped down. I'm at the 113 mark as far as questions. If you had a question early in the show and you want to ask it, please repeat it. And I'm going to go through and try to answer some questions here before we wrap up. And AJ says, how many times were there 2 running back sets on Sunday, if any? I forgot to look for those things when watching the game as a fan. I still have to go through. The final thing that I'm going to do is go through and chart the plays and get those specifics, personnel. Were they boundary heavy in the run game, field heavy, efficiency in the run game? Those are stats I still have to track, so I'll get to those. But there were definitely snaps where they went 21 personnel. I saw that at least 4 or 5 times in the game. I'm curious also on that, AJ, if the fact that they didn't have 2 of their 5 running backs maybe forced them to not use that as much, because when you only have 3 healthy running backs and one of them's a freshman that you're not necessarily ready to play yet, and as physical as Audric Estime is, I don't think he's ready yet in the other parts of the game. You have to be careful about overusing those 2 backs that you have in those 21 personnel stuff. So I'd be really curious to find. I'm going to try to reach out to some people this week and find out, like, hey, did not having 2 backs kind of keep you from using 21 personnel as much as you wanted to? All right, Nicholas Grosh says, I haven't watched a replay of the game, but I did notice that number 27, J.D. Bertrand, is he a guy that can contribute at linebacker, or is he staying as a special teamer? For a guy came in with 7 career tackles. He made 11 in his first start. I thought JD did a nice job. Again, stuff you're going to have to clean up in your first game start, but I thought JD played well. He tackled relatively well. I thought he was active. He's going to have to – some angles at times weren't where he needed to be. His block destruction's got to get a little bit better, a little bit improved from a technique standpoint, but I thought he had a good, solid game for his first start. Pierre says, we opened the game with a pass play. I don't think it has been drilled in that we are going to run the ball. I strongly disagree with that. In 2017, when Notre Dame averaged 270 yards rushing per game, they started most games off with a pass. The Temple game, for example, they started off with a play-action deep shot. I believe the Michigan State game, they started off with a pass play. They did that a lot. I don't say most games. That's too bold of a statement because I'd have to go back and look. But there was plenty of games, including the first play of the season, they started off with a deep shot. So I don't have any issue with that. Brendan McCarthy says, am I being too critical by saying Cone lacked zip on his initial passes in the game? Yeah, I think so. We talked about him underthrowing a couple balls. I think those were more kind of aiming it as opposed to that, but I thought plenty of his passes had zip. I mean, his touchdown pass to Michael Mayer had it. He threw a really nice – so on that drive, they had a sack, and so it's 2nd and 17. He throws a far hash outcut that Braden Lindsey makes a great diving play on and sets up a 3rd down, which then gets them into the 4th down. If he doesn't make that throw, and it had some good zip on it when you consider it was a far field hash. Oh, no, I thought his zip was fine. He's not going to look like Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence or Zach Wilson, but that's never what we said he was going to be. I think if you want to be critical of the deep throws early, fine. If you want to say a couple times maybe he should have gone somewhere after the ball, fine. But I think for some reason people are – it's strange to me because I felt like for years, the last 3 years, nobody would ever admit that Ian Book did anything wrong, ever. And Jack Cone comes out in his first game on the road, has the highest completion percentage in a road game since Tommy Rees back in 2013, leads the team on a 4th quarter drive that should have won it if his All-American tight end doesn't drop the ball, completes 74.3% of his passes, throws for 366 yards, 4 touchdowns, and all a lot of people want to do is find flaws. Where was this the last 3 years, 2 years, especially when you had a quarterback that would struggle for 3 quarters? It's confusing to me. So I don't know if it's just people who don't want to admit that maybe the offense is going to be better throwing the ball with him instead of Ian Book. They don't want to admit that or something. I don't know what it is. It's kind of confusing to me. But it's like whenever I would raise a criticism of Ian Book the last 3 years, a lot of people just lose their minds. They couldn't accept it. Now all anybody wants to do is be critical of a guy that went 26 or 35, including one of those 9 incompletions being a Hail Mary, 2 of those incompletions being pure drops. He should have had over an 80% completion rate, should have had over 400 yards passing, had 4 touchdowns, and people want to be critical of it. Look, and not say, hey, did a great job, but there's some things you want to clean up. That I'm cool with that. That's all I do. Great job, but there's some things you need to do different. But people say, I've literally had people tell me they weren't impressed with how Jack Cone played on Sunday. I don't get it. I don't get it. And Mr. Hewtown says defense had guys flying in and missing all night. They need to clean that up. I agree. I have a super chat down here from Fat Fish. Just rewatched the game, and my God, the offensive lineman looked lost on some of these plays. I don't know what Carmody was looking at on the 3rd quarter sack. Yeah, he was thinking he had to step in and protect the B gap. There was a clear miscommunication of what he needed to do. I honestly am not super upset about that stuff. I'm really not, Fat Fish, because I expected things like that. And let's not forget, Michael Carmody's being thrown in at left tackle because there's an injury. So I'm not too worried about that just yet. Now, if he's doing it in game 3 and game 4, then that's obviously problematic. Those are the kind of things I can live with in an opener. I'm not okay with it. I'm not happy about it. I'm going to get on him in the film room. But I just feel like it's just not stuff I'm going to be too upset about in an opener. Tyler says, felt like it was back to normal. Packed stadium and lots of noise. It definitely was. It definitely was. Brendan McCarthy, I'm okay with the 4th-and-1 pass for TD. That was a Holtz-like call. I would hope you're okay with it. That was a great call. I love the word. So we missed some things early. Were there people not liking those calls, or is that just you sharing your opinion? I'm just curious about that because I missed a lot of the earlier stuff. Mr. Hewtown says 3-man front needs a monster in the middle. I'm not sure Heinisch is that guy. I don't agree with that because I think you're looking at the 3-man front like the Bob Diaco 3-man front, where it's a 2-gap, eat up space kind of thing. They don't need that kind of guy in a 3-down front if they're penetrating. And I think that was the issue that I saw too in the second half was they weren't turning that D-line as loose as much, especially the nose. But no, I don't think they need a Lewis Nix type of guy at nose. It'd be nice. I would never turn down a Lewis Nix type of guy, but I don't think they need that. And again, the 3-down is not meant to be your base defense. I don't believe it's meant to be a change up. They went to that because they were saying, hey, look, we're not going to give up the big play. That was the reason they did it. We're not going to give up the big play. And they didn't give up a lot of big plays after that. But what you did was you allowed them to just go down the field. And when there's still 20 minutes of game time left, you can't get conservative. You just can't because we saw exactly what happened. Chief Brody says, I think had he done that in the 4th quarter up 18, maybe 10 minutes left, it would have been fine. It would have been fine, Chief Brody. You're absolutely right. And we talked about this during the show because there wouldn't have been enough possessions left. They started doing this midway through the 3rd quarter. That was the problem for me. Absolutely. Absolutely. So Japheth says, was the decision to not go after them aggressive, like you said, partly BK, or was it all Freeman? I think it's partly both because, like as we said earlier, I think we saw the offense do the same thing. Tommy Reese had been aggressive all night long, and all of a sudden they're not aggressive anymore. That tells me that it was more of a head coaching thing, like, hey, let's not take any chances, that kind of thing. That's to me more of what it looked like to me. Tyler says Cone looked so calm and collected the whole night. I agree. I agree with that. Pierre says, was it possible Marcus was conserving the D-line? It was a hot game. It was, so play more guys. But you have to stay with the front 4. And a lot of those times they were at a 4-down. He still had a 4th defensive or 3-down. They still had a 4th defensive lineman on the field. He just was playing off the ball. So he wasn't really conserving guys. Irish Cubby says, I get the idea to try to get them back to put a drive together, but once they did, it would have been nice to see them get back to what they did before. I agree. Chief Brody says, previous Notre Dame teams, once they got up at halftime and almost totally relaxed, had the rough patch, then figured it out. They made me pay for that in this. They made me pay for that in this game. Yeah, I imagine because you had some money on it. D-Rock says, stop being a nice guy. Once your opponent is down, throat stomp them. Yeah, I get it. All right. Just want to, Chief Brady says, just want to say that I've never, having never played a single snap of actual football, this show has made me recognize and understand the things I'm saying during the game massively. That's what we want to do. Yeah, that's absolutely what we want to do. We want to make sure that when you're watching these games, you can look for these things. You can think critically. Like Chief Brody, there's a couple things that you said that I didn't necessarily agree with or to the degree that you did, but I like where your mind is coming from. And that's ultimately what we want to do. I'll be honest, like some of the best compliments that we get are, and this is the one that I've always liked over the years I've done this, is when people say to me, hey, I enjoy watching the game more now, or hey, I was talking ball and I was able to, win an argument because of what we've learned watching the show. I love that, especially for people who didn't play the game, because I feel like you don't have to have played football to understand football. And that's all ultimately what we want to do is if you're going to be critical of the team or the coach or a player, whatever, at least have some foundation for which you can then build that criticism. And that's what I would like to see. Brendan says, when our safeties dropped 12 to 15 yards off the line of scrimmage, we were playing two deep coverage. That coverage was a top down, keep everything in front, no driving on the 15-yard dig and trying to be a hero. It wasn't really a two deep coverage, because in two deep, you're a lot more aggressive on the outside. I somewhat agree with your premise, but I mean, that was just overall, we talked about that. It was just sort of a, don't give up the big play. Like you said, I mean, don't let it get over your head. Don't let them throw the 60-yard touchdown like they did to make it, 20. I think that was the key, because all Florida State had done in the first three scores was just rip off big plays. And I think they didn't want to eliminate that, but it just was too early for me to do that. And so, I get the overall point of what you're saying. I don't necessarily think it was too deep, because they were still rolling their safeties down and different things like that. But yeah, it was, Indy fan 8807. What's one area of the team you guys are more confident in after the game, and one area you're less confident in? I don't know if I can say there's something I'm more confident in, because we had high expectations for Jack Cohn and the running backs and the receivers, and they all played to our what we thought they could be. With first game, things that you got to clean up. I think when you look at the offensive line, I'm probably a little bit more concerned about that unit. I'm a little bit more concerned defensively with the tackling than I thought it would be. I mean, I expected some first game mistakes, but it was worse than I thought. I think those are the two areas where I'm a little bit more concerned. And how quickly can you get that fixed in an era where you just can't hit as much? There's ways to do tackling without tackling. There's ways to teach tackling without tackling, and they're going to have to figure some of those things out. And it's a little harder sometimes to clean those up and during the season, because you've got to do so much game planning. And it's going to be harder to do this week when you're going to have a shorter week to prepare for Toledo. So that has me a little bit concerned. Tom M says, Mayer, for all his greatness, has to learn to catch the ball in critical situations. He did the same thing last year. I think was it Clemson that happened last year? Jamal Chamberlain says, looked like Shane Simon took a false step on the 89-yard touchdown, which put him 2 steps behind. He just missed the tackle. So this is what Jamal's referring to, and he's absolutely right. He did 2 mistakes. Number one is, so Shane stepped away from the pulling guards for some reason. So Clemson or Florida State, I'm actually going to pull the play up here so I can kind of talk through it. You all won't be able to see it, but I want to make sure that I'm talking through it. They were running a counter to the right. Florida State was. So they were pulling like an old school counter, like guard tackle counter. They were pulling them to the right of the offensive line. Shane Simon was the strong side backer to that side. And so for some reason on that play, I don't know, maybe it was called, like maybe they were running a stunt. So one of two things happened from what Jamal's talking about. I think they were running a stunt to that side, because Shane steps down right at the snap. So either he made the mistake and stepped away from the pulling guards, which I don't think he did, or what happened was it wasn't necessarily a false step, Jamal. You're correct in what happened, but to me, because you also have the mic coming off the edge, to me it looked like they were stunting their linebackers. And they were stunting their linebackers to the strong side. Now, the problem was, I think one of the defensive linemen made a mistake, because you had the left, so like to the right side of the Notre Dame defensive line. So the left side of Florida State, those guys both slanted away from the double linebacker stunt. Then the backside defensive tackle, which I think it was Riley Mills, slanted inside, and that opened up a huge hole. And so to me, it looked like that was a mistake that was made there, that one of the defensive linemen slanted inside and got washed down, which then opened up a hole. I personally don't think I would fault Shane for that, because I do think it was called, but he took a step away from the call, and that's what Jamal's referring to, and that's where I think Jamal's right, and it didn't give him time to get over. The second mistake was, and this is something that Shane has always it's been an issue for Shane, is he just doesn't use his speed and athleticism the way he should. I'm watching the play. He's got to see that and really aggressively fly over there, and he didn't. He kind of tried to kind of go around the guy, and he barely got his hands on. You see that guy get up the field, you need to do one of two things. You need to either run past him and force the cutback, or two, you need to blow that dude up and knock him into the back. Shane did neither of those things. And I think that's what ultimately hurt them on that particular play. So that's something certainly that he's going to have to improve on. But yes, Jamal's right. He went the opposite direction of it, which is another thing that hurt and it kept him from getting over there. Chief Brody, more confident quarterback and wide receiver, less confident O-line and Marcus Freeman. I would say I'm not there yet on Marcus Freeman. I'm not, because I think part of the issue is part of it was he was, we talked about it. John Erickson with his daily IB sarcasm alert. Saying defense had 5 sacks and 2 INTs is like saying a golfer saying, sure, I shot a 97, but I had 2 birdies. See, I don't agree with that. I get what you're saying, but I don't necessarily agree with the premise. I think the defense was incredibly disruptive in the first half. Incredibly disruptive. David Knight says, one game should not predicate an outlook for the rest of the season. We weren't exactly giant killers last year against Duke either. I agree completely. Let's also not forget that Ohio State, a team that many predict to be a national title contender this year, struggled with the Minnesota team that also had a losing record last year. I actually think Ohio State might have lost that game if Muhammad Ibrahim doesn't get hurt. But, they won that game going away. That was a competitive game. I would say that game was closer for a longer stretch of time than this game was, because Notre Dame had a chance to pull away. The difference is Ohio State didn't lose when in the fourth quarter, when Minnesota would score, Ohio State went right back on the attack. Now, Tommy Rees did that in the second and third quarter, but it was obvious that there was a foot off the gas afterwards. But they struggle with Minnesota. Oklahoma, again, who's what are they now? Number 3 team in the country now. They dropped down to 4. So Oklahoma, who's the number 4 team in the country, played Tulane. I don't think anyone would say Tulane's better than Florida State. Played Tulane. Tulane got the ball with 2 minutes left with a chance to go down and win the game, just like Florida State did. You look at Iowa State. Iowa State is ranked as the number 10 team in the country. They dropped down 2 spots. They were right behind Notre Dame at number 8. They won against Northern Iowa by 6, right? Oregon barely beat Fresno State. Georgia scored 3 offensive points against Clemson. Clemson scored 3 offensive points against Georgia. It's like, as David said, it's the first game of the year. Some of this stuff is going to be you kind of expect some of it, but that doesn't mean that I'm okay with all of it. It's just some of it was. Nate Wallace says, does Mayer typically wear receiver gloves? I noticed he wasn't wearing any Sunday night. I'm going to go back and look at some old photos I have of Michael Mayer and see if he was wearing gloves in the past, because I don't. Yeah, so I'm looking at last year, and in games last year, he always had gloves. So I don't know why he did not have gloves on Sunday night. But no, I'm looking at like Duke game last year had gloves on, Clemson ACC title game, Clemson regular season game, all those games he had gloves on. Patrick Hoyle asks, Brian, if you were the DC and had a 38-20 lead halfway through the third quarter and your head coach said to take the foot off the pedal, what would you run with the Indy personnel structurally? What I would do is I would have this is a great question, Patrick, by the way, a great question. I would have kind of done what Marcus Freeman did, but I would have done it with a 4-man look, because even with a 4 down, you can still attack with that group. Yes, you got to sit your linebackers back. You have to sit your safeties back. You're going to play off coverages. But what happens is with a 4 down, you get 2 things happen for you. Number one, with a 4 down and your linebacker staying back, you still have 4 gaps being occupied with your front 4. Part of the problem with the run game when Notre Dame went to the almost exclusive 3 down is you were able to get your linemen up to the second level a lot more effectively, which meant the linebackers, the undersized linebackers, who are playing so well early, we're now taking on these big guys in space with no momentum. That's a problem. You also allow them to run more free to the ball if you keep those linemen more at the line of scrimmage, which you can do in a 4-down front. Also, when they drop back to throw the ball with your base defense in, 4-down base defense in and lined up, you still have Foskey attacking the quarterback. So that's what I would have done. Coach says, hey, look, don't play tight, play more zone. Don't let them throw it over your head. No more run stunts. Okay, fine, coach, you got it. But I'm still playing 4-down, and I'm still letting that front four attack. I think that would have been more effective. I think you'd have seen a few more negatives, tackles for loss, sacks with those looks than you would have seen the others. All right, I'm going to get some of these Florida State fans out of here. And Patrick responds with, I would run a 4-2-5 mixed cover 4 and cover 2. I don't know if I'd have played a lot of cover 4 too. The problem with cover 2 is you can there's still vulnerability throwing the ball down the field. I would have played mostly cover 4 and cover 3 instead of cover 1. That's to me, especially with Kyle Hamilton being your free safety, that's what I would have done. I would have done more of that. But I think the key would have been the 4-down front. You said 4-2-5. I think that's the key, Patrick, is having that that defensive lineman. Trying to find some more questions here. A lot of comments about Michael Mayer. Chief Brody says, not sure why Mayer was trying to turn up the field on that last drop. Should have been securing the catch. I mean, I understand it. Yeah, you got to secure that catch, but he's thinking, hey, I got a step, and we're going to get in field goal range. I'm trying to get as much as I can. Plus, the clock's running down, urgency, catch it, get what you can, go down. I get why he did it, and he's just a sophomore, but he can't do that. That's the thing. Mr. Hewtown with a great point. This game was going exactly how it should have been going until we relinquished the 18-point lead. That cannot happen. I agree with you completely. And that's why I say third quarter, you should never, ever pull the dogs off with a less than 3 touchdown lead in the third quarter, unless you're playing like somebody that's bad. And even then, I don't know if I'd do it. I'd wait till I'd get that more than 3 touchdown lead. I think that's going to be the key. You do that, and then now all of a sudden you can start having some success. And that's, again, that's where I think Notre Dame's mistake was in this game. All right. Hey, Adam, I'm not sure what this question is or what you're trying to ask, who you're trying to bring back. So I'm just curious what you're asking there. Mr. Pirates Loot, lifelong Florida State fan. You guys earned the win. Congrats. Thank you for that. I appreciate you coming in here with some rationality. Had to boot a Florida State guy. Okay, so Sam Crahan, Notre Dame won the overtime flip. Okay, so they went on defense. Somebody in the box that said that Florida State won it. So, yeah, that's why I kind of was like, let me think about that. Jamel Chamberlain says a really good point. I've made this point too. This is a game in the past I feel like Notre Dame may have lost. Going forward, I hope Kelly gets over just trying to win, blow people's doors off. They went into neutral way too soon, in my opinion. I agree with you, Jamel. I think pre-2017, Notre Dame loses this game. Flat out too. I don't know about – I'd have to go back and look at the last 3 years and see which games were like this. Yeah, I'm going to have to go back and look. And really think this through. So I'm gonna have to. I'm trying to think of some games where they blew. Yeah, well, like Virginia Tech. You remember Virginia Tech in 2000. in 2000. What was it? 2019. Right? Is a game where Virginia Tech took a late lead. Notre Dame had to go down and score late to win. Let me see here. Keith Selner says, I think we will miss Marist even more than we thought. This scheme relies on fast linebackers, and he fit that description much more than anyone else they have. I think they're going to miss Marist. I mean, look, he was the starter. I don't think that – I don't know if he was a guy that would have mattered a whole lot when things went the way that they went on the game on Saturday. I think it, to me, it's more of a that wasn't really how I look at it and say, hey, that was the issue, and the game wasn't necessarily the will linebacker. But yeah, I think anytime you lose a starter and someone who's as good as him, I absolutely think it's gonna be an issue. There's no question. I said it. Rob Didoff says, is Sebo suspended? Why was he not there? So, it's just this is one thing that drives me nuts about Brian Kelly. I just don't know why he can't just be honest or at least say something. Look, he gets mad that anyone had the audacity to question whether or not Jordan Botelho was going to be suspended. He says, nope, he's not. I'm pretty confident this wasn't a COVID thing. It was with Logan Diggs. I'm pretty sure it wasn't a COVID thing with Jordan Botelho, and then he's not available for the game. Okay, well, let's see if he's available at home this weekend or at home against Purdue. But this is what happens. When you don't step up and answer questions about your football team, which is your job, then you leave these things to linger. And so was Sebo suspended? I don't know. Was he suspended because of the issue he had this offseason? I don't know. But because the head coach refuses to step up and answer questions, then these rumors about his players are only going to spread. Step up, say what needs to be said. You can say it without look, George's got to work through some things, and he's going to be fine. He's going to be a good player, but right now he's just not going to be available for the next 3-4 games. Just say that, and then we know there's something going on, as opposed to allowing those rumors to continue to spread. Notre Dame 2164. Am I wrong for thinking this team may never reach its potential from year to year with Quinn as offensive line coach? I don't necessarily disagree with that. Kyle Stewart, I didn't understand why our fastest guy couldn't return kicks because they wouldn't let him. And I don't understand that at all. At all. Ben Tarnowski, do you think the lack of defensive adjustments have anything to do with Freeman being on the field instead of in the booth like Clark? No, not at all. This is a non-issue for me. And I've said this for years, because a lot of people questioned why Clark Lee and Mike Elko were on the sidelines or in the box because most defensive coordinators on the field. It's a non-issue for me. The lack of adjustments had to do with the fact that I think that they changed their defensive philosophy and they were going to more of again, I don't think it was a prevent, but more of a, hey, don't give up the big play defense. That's not who Marcus Freeman is. Marcus Freeman is a attacking kind of guy. I think that was the issue. I think that was where you come to the lack of defensive adjustments. And I think, to me, that – and here's the thing, too. Once you do that, it's hard to then turn it back on. And I think we saw that, too. But, yes, there were some mistakes he made. Again, I would not have gone to it. Look, if your coach tells you to kind of back off a little bit, that's fine. But then don't go to a 3-down front. That, to me, was a mistake. Joseph Salvatore, if we get the roughing the punter call and go up 45-20, does the defense have that awful fourth quarter? I don't think so. Because that's when you could have said, hey, you want to let him go on a 6-minute drive? Let him go on a 6-minute drive. That's fine. Nolan says, I want to say thanks for all the coverage this weekend. It was nice to see all the differing perspectives. I wasn't as active in the game chat because I was stressed, but it was nice to have. And I'm glad that you were there. It was I'll be honest, the game chat went a lot better. There's a lot more involved than I thought that there was going to be. Matt Romero started a certain USC game with a pass play. Yeah, Notre Dame's first 2 touchdown passes went in 2017. First 2 touchdowns against USC in 2000 were also passes. And they ran for almost 400 yards that game. Cesar, hello, Brian. Hello, Cesar. Glad that you are with us today. No, Brian Kelly did not tell anyone why he was out. Sam Tyrell, how did Simon look when evaluating linebackers like he did last year? Just not aggressive, kind of sitting back, not attacking downhill. Yeah, he needs to do better. Cesar says, dropping by to leave my like. We'll listen to the program later today due to schedule. I have to work today. Well, I appreciate you being with us, Cesar, very, very much. Florida State fan believes that Jack Cohn was outstanding and is only going to get better. Indy and Naples. Brian, based on what you saw in game one, are you revising your season win-loss prediction? Looks like a 9-2 team to me. No, I'm not. First of all, they played 12 games. But no, I'm not changing my prediction because, again, as we told you, look, it'd be one thing if we were like, hey, they're going to blow Florida State out and they're going to dominate. Florida State sucks. And then all of a sudden this game happens. Like, well, you're making – look, I told you last week, I predicted 37-20 was my game prediction. It looked like I undersold that midway through the third quarter when Notre Dame went up 38-20. They made changes. Here's the thing, too. Florida State's comeback began when Notre Dame went away from what got them there. It wasn't that they just got outplayed or they went away from what built them a 38-20 lead. That's what happened. And to me, that's something that has to change. But again, as I said, I said last week, there's going to be sloppy plays. There's going to be things that you're going to see first game mistakes. I expected some of this, not all of it. I'm not saying the overtime win was okay. But it doesn't change anything. Are you going to change? Should anyone change their opinion of Oklahoma because they struggle with Tulane? No. Does anyone think Clemson's going to all of a sudden be a 9-3 team because their offense was awful against Georgia? No, it's an opener. Ohio State in 2014, the year that they won the national championship, lost at home by 2 touchdowns to a Virginia Tech team that went 7-6 that year. That's going to be very similar to what Florida State's going to be, if not maybe a touch better. We told you also this is going to be a better Florida State team than it was last year. Is this your daddy's Florida State team? Heck no. Is it better than it was last year? Absolutely. And so, no, we should not overreact to one game. I knew that game one overreaction was going to happen nationally with Notre Dame. But I'm still going to push back on it and say, if these concerns are happening down the road, yes. Look, remember in 2018 when Notre Dame went and played, went 12-0, they barely beat Ball State, they barely beat Vanderbilt, they barely beat Pitt. All 3 of those teams stunk. You're gonna have games where you don't bring your A game. Notre Dame did not bring their A game, and they still won. They got the W. Now, I'll say this to play devil's advocate to what I just said. If we're still seeing a lot of these same issues in week 3, then I will be a little bit more concerned about that stretch of games that comes up after that. Sam Tyrell, do you have any concern that Marcus Freeman's lack of adjustments? I do to a degree, but I think also part of the problem is that they were happening after they kind of called off the dogs. Now, if that was his decision, I have a problem with that. I think he'll learn from that. But I'm just not, again, one game, if we see this kind of become a problem down the road, then sure. Rolando Wagner, Cohn did great considering how little time the O-line gave him most of the night. I agree. Who is number 68? That is Michael Carmody. And Andrew says, make him left guard. I do think Michael Carmody is a better guard than he is a tackle. But and Zeke Correll really struggled in this game, like regressed. He was getting blown up. I don't think it's a size issue because he was this size last year and didn't get blown up like this. I don't know what it is, but a lot of it is when you're 295, you can't catch. If you're 295 and you're trying to catch, you're going to get blown up. You've got to come off the ball fast and hard. And we didn't see that on Saturday. Florida State's starting center is like 285, and he was coming off hard. Jay Wiki Jr., Cohn looked good once we get the running game going. I'm confident the offense is going to be even better, and we scored 41 points last night. Absolutely. Jeff Williams, defense did a good job swarming into the ball, but they just need to finish the tackle. It will improve. I agree. Sam Tyrell referring to Jack Cohn. I think the criticism comes because he's not a mobile QB, although I don't agree the guy is a stud. Reminds me of Brady Quinn. I think you meant stiff. Oh, I don't agree. Okay, the guy is a stud. Okay, I get what you're saying. Yeah. Chief Brody, my prediction was 35-21. Notre Dame of the past years would have probably suffocated Florida State once they went up 18 and just didn't happen. Again, yeah. I've said what I needed to say on that one. I'm going to keep hammering that point. Joseph Salvatore, Brian, how are you comparing the atmosphere on Sunday night to other Notre Dame road games? It sounded pretty loud on TV. You know, Joseph, it was loud. I don't know if it was necessarily louder than any other games that I've seen. It was loud. It was a good look. I said this before the game and right afterwards. This is a good crowd. Florida State's got a good home crowd. Now, some of the stuff I hear went on in the stands. I don't condone that. I don't condone any fan base to do that. It's one thing to razz opposing people. It's another thing to act the way that some people did. But I don't think that reflects the majority of Florida State fans. But yeah, it was a loud crowd. When things were going good, they were really loud. Notre Dame silenced them a couple times. They didn't give up when they went down 38-20. They stayed in it, and it was a good crowd. I don't think Notre Dame had any issues with the crowd on Saturday night. I don't think that had anything to do with it. Pierre says, how could you not be impressed with Jack Cohn at quarterback? The cleanest quarterback play for us in years. No question on his decision-making or arm strength. Tyler Dijak says, thought Norvell did well calling plays, delayed some draws and runs, allowing Notre Dame to penetrate uphill with only 3 and then opening run lanes. How do you counter that? Drop another guy down. I think you counter that by being aggressive. You have to put a 4th down. You have to have a 4th guy down. No question about it. I mean, you can't just sit back there and do that. I thought Norvell did a good job. Once he saw that, he just kind of kept going at it. He knew that he had enough time, and they kept going at it. I think the thing for Norvell is he didn't panic when they fell behind 38-20. He didn't panic. He didn't say, hey, we got to start. A lot of coaches in that situation just throw the ball. Just drop, hey, we're down 18, we got to throw the ball. And he didn't. He stayed with his game plan. And I think him and the Kenny Dillingham deserve a lot of credit for that. Fatfish says, Myron Tungvalo-Mosa almost looked like he was playing too aggressive on some plays, and it got him out of position. Granted, Florida State has some athletes on their team, but we need to finish those opportunities off next time. I agree. Irish for Life says, hi, all IB Nation. God bless you all. Even though the game didn't go as we hoped, we still won. Absolutely. Thomas Walsh says, please give your assessment of the all-around play of the receivers, Lindsey, Kevin Austin, and Joe Wilkins. I thought Braden Lindsey played a good game. I thought he made a great catch on the sideline that set up the first touchdown pass. If he doesn't make that diving catch, it's 3rd and 17. I don't know if we're in a situation where they are able to throw that ball to Michael Mayer. That was a huge play. Did a great job getting open on that drag route for a second catch. He was open a lot in this game. Cohn couldn't get to him on some of the reads. And then, of course, he underthrew him on the one-go route. Now, I think Brady needs to do a little better job making a play for that ball, but it was pretty underthrown. But I still, as a receivers coach, I would have, hey, man, you need to go up. You need to try to something go up. You can't fade away from that. You got to go up and attack it a little bit more. But again, that play wasn't on him. I would have coached him up to do a better job of it, but that play was on Cohn. But I thought Braden played a good game. I thought Kevin Austin played a very good game. Almost dropped that one ball, but he ended up recovering and catching it. You know, got open on a against a zone to move the chains on a 3rd down. Made a great play on a go route for the touchdown. I mean, it's a great ball. He made a great catch. He got open, blocked relatively well. And Joe Wilkins, he was only targeted once. He wasn't really getting any even on the touchdown. He didn't get any separation. Just made a great play on the ball. His blocking was solid. I thought he did an okay job. I thought Lawrence Keys didn't play a ton, but when he did, I thought he got open a couple times. I thought Avery Davis, he didn't have a great game. I thought he got open a couple times, but Cohn couldn't get to him. His blocking wasn't as good as it needed to be, in my opinion. Fatfish says, we lost contain way too often. I completely agree with your assessment about basically taking the backside backer out of the play. Yeah, the contain issues were there. No, yes, they have to get better. Sam Tyrell says, after seeing the poor guard play continued, would you be in favor of getting younger guys some snaps? I don't know if it's about younger guys. It's about other guys. Yes, I don't think any of the guards necessarily played well enough to feel secure in their spots. But I also don't necessarily believe in overreacting to one game. I'd say, Zeke Correll, look, man, you got to step up and play better. You got to play more force. You got to be more physical. You got to be, you got to anchor better. You got to come off the ball with more downhill ferocity. You got to play better. But Jarrett Patterson didn't play very well either, and I'm not going to bench him, right? So now against Toledo, would I be opposed to getting Rocco some, maybe the third series of the game, getting Rocco Spindler in there for one of those two guys? I wouldn't have a problem with that. Would I consider getting Andrew Kristofic a couple series in this game at guard as well? I know he's center, but he still can play guard. Yeah, absolutely. I would, they are just so like a tackle. If Blake Fisher's out for a period of time, I don't think they can just roll with what they got. I think they're going to have to think. Do you maybe consider moving Patterson out there? I don't think they're going to do that. Do you consider maybe moving Kristofic back out to tackle where he's played? I would consider that. So they're going to have to figure something out because just kind of going with Tosh Baker and Joe Alt, Tosh Baker's not ready yet, and I don't think Joe Alt's ready yet either. They're going to have to figure some things out with if Blake Fisher's going to be out for a while. But even at guard, even what doesn't affect Baker I would, whether it's Rocco, Kristofic, whether it's Quinn Carroll, whether it's John Dirksen, I think this week against Toledo, they need to try to get some of those guys some early reps. Chad Williams says, after watching Ole Miss running their offense, that to me is an RPO system. What Notre Dame does is not RPO. What am I missing? You may like one better, but it's still an RPO. When you're running the ball and there's a guy running a pass route, that's an RPO. Some people run inside zone better than other people. Doesn't mean that you're not running inside zone. It just means you're not running it effectively. I don't think what Notre Dame was doing on Saturday night was overly effective. I thought it's not how I would run RPOs, but it's still RPOs. I just don't think they did a very good job of running it. I don't think they did a very good job of designing it. It's kind of like they were just doing it to try to occupy the outside defenders. That's not a really effective RPO. So, but it's still an RPO. You may not like it, but it's still an RPO. Ryan Wheeler says, being at the game after the first drive by us and our defense's first outing, I thought we were going to blow them out. I agree. Arjon 2021. How about that second INT by Hamilton? He saved a touchdown and probably the game with that pick. Number 6 and number 9 mixing up coverage. Yeah, there was definitely because it was a scramble drill and both Justin Adamiola and I think it was Clarence Hart. And actually, I don't know if it's Clarence Hart or Cam Hart or Clarence Lewis or Cam Hart. I'd have to go back and look because their numbers are pretty similar. But I was a little – I didn't think he was going to get there. And if he did get there, maybe he breaks it up. But he was – you guys all saw the replay. He was on the far side of the field. The only other play that I've ever seen that comes anywhere close to that was a play that Harrison Smith made against Utah back in 2010. But, that was one of the best individual plays I've ever seen from a defensive back in person. It was just the awareness was there, the range to be able to make the play on the ball, to have the confidence in yourself that you actually can't, try to make the play on the ball. A lot of guys and this is what separates Kyle Hamilton from others. It's not just the range, but a lot of players would have kind of said, oh, I just need to get over there and try to hit the receiver. Kyle was locked in on the ball. And as I get the ball. Most guys wouldn't even have the confidence in themselves to try to make a play on the ball, much less actually, make the play. It was really impressive. Mr. Hartman, 1188. What do you think about having Kyron Williams return punts? If he's the best guy for it, go for it. Go for it. More chances to get him to football. Cliff Rensberger, I know one of your big keys for the offense was to be explosive and efficient. How do you feel the offense is trending in that regard after Florida State? The explosive part I liked. I would still like to see some plays where the explosiveness comes from after the catch plays. We only saw that really once. That was on that screen, which was a tremendously well-designed screen. But part of that, too, was Florida State was playing so many guys in like the first and second level of the defense, there wasn't a lot of catch and run opportunities, but you had a 41-yard touchdown. You had a 37-yard touchdown. You had a 23-yard touchdown. You had a 55-yard catch and run on a screen. Braden Lindsey catches a 20-plus yard gain on a drag. So you had some explosiveness you had in the pass game. Run game, there was no explosiveness. I thought the efficiency in the pass game was outstanding. I mean, look, you look at Jack Cohn's numbers from the game, and from an efficiency standpoint, they were elite. Number one, he completes 74.3% of his passes, and that includes a tipped ball and 2 drops. You look at his yards per attempt, 10.5 yards per attempt. That's special. Yards per completion was 14.1. That shows me that with a 10.5 completion percentage, there was a lot of shorter throws. That leads to greater efficiency. You're not necessarily going to be explosive in that regards, but you had some big plays. Part of the reason some of the plays weren't longer is because they were short fields. I mean, Kevin Austin's 37-yard touchdown, could have gone for a little longer if they were back further. He probably still scores if it's from 45, right? So I think those are things. I mean, you look at the 10.6 yards per attempt, to put it into comparison, last year, that would have ranked 3rd nationally if that was his stats over the course of the whole season. Alabama last year in yards per attempt was at 11, and that led the nation. I mean, in 2019, you take away the triple option schools. I mean, 11 is what Alabama was the top non-option school. LSU that year was 10.6. So what Jack Cohn did yesterday from a yards per attempt standpoint, despite 2 drops, was what Joe Burrow did in 2019. I mean, that should tell you something. And if you look at Jack Cohn's numbers and you look at him, say, what would those numbers look like over the course of an entire season? If you just go and say, hey, he's going to play a 12-game regular season, his numbers from Saturday would give him 4,392 passing yards, and it would give him 48 passing touchdowns. That's a lot. I mean, that should put that game into perspective. Now, is he going to do that every play? Nope. But yeah, that was an impressive performance. Fat Fish. P.S. Just paid for my year membership on the Irish Breakdown boards. Love the IB family. Enjoy your content so much. Thank you for working hard for us. Go Irish. Thank you for signing up. Very, very much for signing up. I appreciate that. I appreciate that very much. And I love this family too. Vince and I were talking about that yesterday. It's a great crew. It's a great crew. Sam Tyrell, teams are going to be running counters on us all year long. Defensive staff need to be prepared. Yes. Based on what they saw Saturday night, you better believe they are. Absolutely. Maybe fans aren't excited about a 1-year quarter. I don't care how many years he's going to be here. He played a great job on Sunday night. And if you have some other agenda that keeps you from accepting how well he played, that's a you problem, not a Jack Cohn problem. Martin Demo says, when does the AP poll come out? Not that it matters. It just came out. USA Today and AP polls came out. Notre Dame is 7th on the coaches poll, which is what they were. They went up a spot in the AP poll. They're up to number 8. So they are number 8 in the AP poll now. Tom says LSU's quarterback was a 1-year quarterback when they won the championship. Actually, he was there 2 years. Now, you may not have known that because he did nothing his first year. He had very mediocre numbers. But yeah, he actually started in 2018 as well. But yeah, Jalen Hurts was a 1-year quarterback there at Oklahoma. I mean, excuse me, at Oklahoma. I mean, we've seen 1-year quarterbacks. I don't know why that should be a problem for anybody. That seems kind of silly for me. All right, I'm going to try to get to some more questions here before we get out of here. John Erickson says, asked this earlier, saw several interconference games, and it was routine to use neutral ref crews. Why is Notre Dame saddled with opponents' refs week after week? That's a great question. I would have negotiated something like that into the contract. So, like, we're not using, especially after what happened in 2014. I'd say, no, we're getting a Big 12 crew or something like that. D-Rock, did you know the Notre Dame Florida State game was the 3rd highest scoring game of the week? I would have assumed it was up there. I don't necessarily like that because I don't want the opponent to do that. Brian Denbo, I noticed that at the start of the game there was a lot of wet pants. Was there too much warm up? No, they did their normal warm up. That's just how humid it was down there. I'm trying to find some more. Yeah, here's some perspective. Washington lost to Montana, and Clark Lee didn't have a great first game either. They lost by 20 points to East Tennessee State. Adam Blair says, "Who do you think we will bring back next year in 2022?" It's way too early for that, Adam. I think for me, it just depends on how guys play. There's a lot of guys I may say, hey, right now I'd want to bring him back, but I won't. Depending on how they play, I may not bring him back. Some guys I'd say, hey, right now I'd bring that guy back, but if he doesn't play well, I wouldn't bring him back. So it's a little early for me. I'm not trying to disregard your question. It's just to me too early for that. Plus, the NCAA is considering maybe expanding rosters for next year because of COVID. And if that's true, that could also impact who you bring back. Certainly. Michael Rice asks, did you notice at the end of the fourth quarter that the clock kept running before the chains got set? I did not notice that. I'll actually go back and look at that. I think you're talking about on that final drive. So I'm actually going to go back and look at that now. I think, because they got to wait on that. They got to wait until the chains are set before they can start the clock. So that's interesting. I didn't notice that. Not answering that question. Chad Williams, this is an interesting point. Being up 38-20 is what is most frustrating. The game had 3 mini games wrapped into one. That is what is frustrating for me. I get all that, but again, this is game 1, though, right? You can't expect a team to look like they're in mid-season form in week 1. Very few teams did that on Saturday. Really, only one, and that was partly because the other team just didn't come to play. D-Rock says, question, do we have another kicker that can do the kickoffs? Let's save Doerr's leg for the field goals, especially if we score 40-plus points per game. I'm okay with him doing both. I mean, it's not like he's kicking 75 extra points in field goals. Kickoffs are, if anything, kickoffs are a way for him to continue to stay loose and keep that leg swing and do all those type of things. So I don't have a problem with it. As long as he can do it. Where I'd have an issue with it, D-Rock, is some kickers – it's because it's a different leg swing and a different approach, and some kickers can get into a funk on PATs and field goals because the kickoff messes them up. It's not many, but some can do that. Paul Keene asks, why do you think Notre Dame had such a hard time tackling? I don't know. They didn't tackle well last year either, so I don't know if it's an approach thing or what, but it's going to have to get figured out. Roderick Blackman, game 1 against an inspired Florida State team. Glad to get the W. Saw some good, saw some bad. Just game 1, though. I agree. Tavis McKay says, I feel like Notre Dame keeps on leaving the game plan when we have a lead instead of continuing. I agree. Do you think that BK telling Marcus to not attack or as much could possibly cause a rift with the different philosophies and whatnot, or do you think it's a non-issue? I don't think it's caused a rift. I mean, head coach tells you to do that. You don't do that. Now, I think what you do is you go in and talk to him afterwards, say, look, I'd like to maybe keep the heat up a little bit more or something like that and see what he says, but I don't think it'll cause a rift. Head coach makes a decision, you roll with it. Jack Lassonde, biggest surprise result for you in college football this week? I really thought Miami was at least going to show up to play and battle them. I really did. I saw no scenario in which Tulane was going to be competitive with Oklahoma. I didn't. I didn't. So give me. Sorry, I had to get a little note to one of my writers here real quick. Joseph Salvatore, Brian, what was the game atmosphere like down there compared to other Notre Dame away games you've been to? It sounded super loud on TV. Got asked this earlier. It was a very good environment. I don't know if I'd say it was necessarily louder than some other games, but it was a really good environment. Darian Thomas, Brian, how do you feel about Milton's play? I thought he did a good job. I mean, he came in there against a team playing off and made the throws he needed to make. I thought the most impressive play, he did like this little shovel pass, and that was like vintage McKenzie Milton. He gets the defensive lineman to or the linebacker to kind of suck up, and then just kind of flicks it behind him. I thought that was impressive. He's a fun kid to watch. Old Grim said, I wasn't able to watch Sunday. My vision is coming back well now, so all the coverage bailed me out for the game. I'm glad you were able to get that, and I hope you're feeling better. I hope you're able to watch this weekend. Get there. Nolan Esparza says, I could be totally off, but I've seen a very good Notre Dame team that shot themselves in the foot many, many times. My only real concern is the O-line. Presently and in the future, this team is loaded with potential. I agree. Some conversation going down here. So let me get to a few more of these before I wrap up. I got to get some work done here. Chief Brody, does the O-line have the pieces to turn it around, or does it look like it's going to be a struggle through the whole year? I don't think the pieces are the problem. I think the preparation and the coaching is the problem. I think getting the most out of the players is the problem. But I don't think there's a lot of teams in this country, a lot of teams that would love to have Notre Dame's players. Paul Rose. Is that kind of like a mini SIG signal in there, like a 316 kind of? Is that like where you're from or something? Taking the SIG logo, I like that. I actually have a hat, a SIG Sauer hat that looks a lot like that. But he says, I think there's some concerns O-line needing to gel for this team, but I also believe there's some serious overreactions. I agree. D-Rock says, Brian has said for at least the last couple of weeks, if Notre Dame doesn't bring their A game, Florida State could beat us. I don't know if I said they have to play their A game to beat Florida State. I said that if that maybe B game, but I said if Notre Dame doesn't play well, that Florida State could beat them. I thought they played relatively well. Chad Williams says, coming off the ball hard, in my experience, that is either coaching or scheme. Yes, it's coaching. It can be scheme, no question, Chad. In this instance, it's not scheme. An inside zone offense should never not be physical and not be aggressive, ever. Ray Salsa 1. What particular positions usually take the most time to fix correctable mistakes? I think it's usually positions that are where it's multiple guys kind of working together. So offensive line, I think that's usually it. If block destruction, so if your guys are involved in block destruction, that can sometimes take a little bit longer. But O-line to me. Brian, what is your biggest concern for the Toledo game? In regards to winning and losing, I have none. In regards to building yourself for the future, my biggest concerns are probably just can you in a shorter week, can you properly address some of the things that need to be worked on? Can you properly address tackling on a shorter week, especially after a week in which you got to be careful with it because you had a hot, humid night. You guys are going to need a couple of days to recover. You don't necessarily want to jump back out the next practice and just hammer them for 2.5 hours. You got to be careful with that. So you got to maybe get a little creative on fixing some of the tackling issues. Offensive line wise, I think to me, my biggest concern is can they take a step? Look, we saw it against Ball State. I don't want to see regression. I don't see another game that looks just like this one. I want to see some progress. That to me is what I want to see. Kyle Dolan says, if the O-line is being taught to catch and they don't make any position changes, what are the chances the run pass blocking actually improves? Against good teams, it won't. It won't. Joe Marnell, how did Fisher do when he was healthy? He was okay. He didn't have any big mistakes, but he wasn't super great either. He didn't, he got the job done. I thought his feet were a little slow in the game. He looked like he was not punching with any force enough. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes. Michael Moore says, Brian, there were 82 games last week, and the home team won 61 of them. I might be off 1 or 2 games. It's an interesting stat. I'd like to see that because I know because initially I'm thinking, well, that doesn't make sense because there's only 130 teams. So, but then there's a lot of FCS games too. So I would always take FCS games out of the equation for that. Although some people lost to FCS. FCS had like 5 or 6 wins this past weekend. A couple of them were like beatdowns. Vanderbilt got smacked by East Tennessee State. South Dakota State smacked Colorado State by like 20 something. It was a, and of course, Montana beating Washington. Jacob Steele says, hey, coach, is there a reason BK always elects to receive to start the game? Are you a fan of that idea? Obviously, it worked against FSU, but that doesn't happen often on their first drive. I always would take the ball. Even if I had a great defense, because it's about possessions. I want as many opportunities to score, and I want to score early. And I'm always the guy that wants the ball first, especially as an offensive guy. I always want the ball, and I have no problem with it. I think people overthink this. I think it's about what you think is best, what your team's plans are, what your team's strategies are. Always do that. Michael O'Brien asks, when Fisher is ready to play left tackle, would the staff consider moving Carmody to left guard? Seems we struggled there a lot. Size issue. Again, I don't think it was a size issue. If you're 2'9", let me rephrase. It's a size issue if you're going to catch. It's not a size issue if you fire off. And that's the problem. They weren't aggressive. That needs to get fixed. Michael Martz, Irish moved up to number 8. Do you think it's too high or too low? I think they should be ranked higher. But after winning in overtime, you can't really make that case. But, I mean, there's definitely teams that are ahead of Notre Dame that I do not think should be ahead of Notre Dame. Joseph Salvatore says, not going to lie, I'm super happy for Jonathan Dorr. Couldn't have been a bigger pressure situation, and he did what he needed to do. Will do wonders for his confidence. I agree. Chad Williams says, I don't even count Cohn's interception. He played great. I'm excited for his decision-making and letting his receivers make plays. Need a few more vertical and middle-of-the-field routes to happen. The middle-of-the-field routes were not really going to happen in this game. The way that Florida State was playing, that they were basically saying attack outside. There are some things I would have done a little bit differently to attack outside with some different concepts. But again, I don't think Tommy Rees had they like to run a flood concept, right? And I think that would have really worked against Florida State. But that requires time. And I don't think there was a lot of time based on how that game was playing out. I don't think there was a lot of confidence from the Notre Dame staff, that or at least from Tommy Rees, that they were going to have the time. And I think that was an issue too. But Florida State was playing in a way that was going to limit your ability to attack sort of the middle of the field in a lot of ways. Michael O'Brien, see, this is an interesting one. Norvell did a smart thing challenging the tuck rule call. Yeah, it didn't work out, but would you rather have your kicker 50 or 36 yards? Easy to take the 30 yards. But see, here's the problem with that, Michael, and I understand what you're saying, but it's 2 things. Number one is then you should have never sent your kicker out there. You let him kick the ball, right? Like, he lined up and he got the kickoff. He made the kick. That can jack what a guy – that's what teams do all the time, right? Like, that's what he – like, basically, when Notre Dame lined up for the game-winning field goal, right, Notre Dame got in their stance, and what did Norvell do? He waited right before he thought the ball was going to get snapped, and he called timeout. What's he trying to do? He's trying to ice the kicker. Well, what did he do when he challenged the rule? The guy was lined up. They snapped the ball. He kicked it, but right before that, he called timeout. So he did to his own kicker what he also did to Notre Dame's kicker, which is iced him. Then he goes out and he misses the second kick. If he was going to challenge it, he should have done it right away. So I don't necessarily disagree with your premise, but once he let that kid lined up, he just needed to let him kick it. Because, again, he did to his kicker what he did to Notre Dame's kicker, trying to ice him. So if he would have done it right away and not sent his field goal team out there and then just argued until he got – because what he was trying to do is he was trying to let them – he was trying to let the replay booth signal the replay, and then he waited until they didn't. It was clear they weren't. That he called timeout. What he should have done, he should have kept his unit on the sideline, or at least on the field, but like lined up on the side. Argued with the officials, let the clock run down, and if they didn't trigger it, then he just could have called timeout then. But he doesn't send his kicker out there and get his kicker's thought process already going. The kicker doesn't go through the kick. He doesn't make a kick, and now he's got to do it again. That was my issue. So Chadwin says, okay, no argument here. Indy RPO is for show then. They rarely pull the ball out and throw behind the linebacker when they bite. Most RPO teams that I track do exactly what Ole Miss and others alike. And again, I've broken this down and I've showed this. So it's like I feel like you're just trying to argue with me to argue. Okay. I didn't say I loved what Notre Dame did on Saturday. You didn't hear me say that. But you can't say it's not an art. You can't just define things how you want them to be defined. You may not like it. I didn't like it. I talked about that at the beginning of the show that I didn't like that. I don't know whether it was Cone not doing it or he wasn't allowed to do it. It needs to change. That's what I said at the beginning of the show. So I'm not saying it's great, but you can't change the term and say, because I don't like how they block inside zone, I'm not going to call it inside zone. It's still an inside zone. You just didn't block it well, or you didn't scheme it well. It's still an RPO. You just don't like how they're doing it. Neither do I, but it's still an RPO. So you're trying to change the terms. You can't change the terms. We can be critical of how they did it, and we would agree, but it's still an RPO. And he says Notre Dame does not do that. I think it's personnel. I don't think it's personnel at all. I think it's a coach's. I don't think they're believers in the RPO. I think, to your thing, I think they do kind of do it for show. I don't think they really they don't have a game plan to say, hey, we really need to take advantage of this, our skill. I don't think that at all. You've got Michael Mayer, Kevin Austin, Braden Lindsey. Those three guys alone are legitimate RPO weapons. Michael O'Brien says, I think this FSU team will win 8 games. They really are a good team. Notre Dame 12-0, baby, but need to clean stuff up. Absolutely. Chad Williams says, I'm curious to see how Cone's progressions evolve. If he can see his second or third reads and still have time to throw, I am confident he will. He did that several times, right? I don't know where this comes from. Like he only ever went to his first or second read. Number one, he completed 80% of his passes for over 10 yards per attempt. Clearly his first and second reads were open a lot, but he wasn't always throwing to his first, second read. At times he did. It was obvious. You know, the both throws to Kevin Austin on short yardage, or first play of the series and on short yardage, there was no other read. Kevin Austin was the first read. He got the one-on-one. Why would you go to a second or third read? The touchdown pass to Joe Wilkins, that was not his primary read. He read front side to back side and threw the ball. The touchdown pass to Michael Mayer, he was reading the play side. The corner comes up. There's no safety. He took the read. Why would you want to go again? That was most people teach a smash concept, low to high, but it's two guys with the option. So whoever you throw to, I mean, there's a first or a second read. You can say what you want, but it's one read of the defense, and you're going to throw to one or two guys. So I don't see an issue with him not going through reads for the vast majority of the game. There's a couple times. There's the drag route where he hits Braden Lindsey. That was him clearly going to his next read. Yes, technically Michael Mayer was open. He could have easily just taken Michael Mayer on that play. By definition of how you teach it, by the technical way in which you teach it, you probably should have thrown the ball to Michael Mayer. But you want to have a quarterback be savvier than that. And you say, hey, look, you see no one behind him. You know, you see Braden Lindsey coming across, hit him. And that's what he did. So some big plays in this game where he went to his second or third read. So I feel like sometimes these mantras start and everybody just kind of grabs onto it and runs with it. And I don't agree with it. Trying to get to a few more here before we go. I do got to get going here. David Knight says, Brian, since we have shifted to real-time games, have you heard anything about Bradshaw? I have not. I talked to him about a week ago. He's still talking to Notre Dame, still talking about getting up on a visit, but he hasn't told me specifically that he's definitely coming. Fatfish says, doesn't Jack Cohn technically have another year from COVID? No, he does not. So Jack Cohn played 3 full years at Wisconsin prior to last year. If he would have played last year, COVID would have given him a 5th year. He got hurt. And the reality is you can't take 2 years. You can't gain 2 years of eligibility from one. You can't take a medical and a COVID year from one season. You can take one or the other, but you can't take both. So he only has 1 year. And I've confirmed with Notre Dame. Finally got somebody confirmed that this summer he does not have an extra year of eligibility. Let's see here. Keaton asks, is Cohn the real deal? What's your opinion? I mean, my opinion of him is the same as it's always been. He's a really good quarterback. D-Rock says, question, any Notre Dame recruits that attended the Notre Dame Florida State game? Yeah, there were several. Jalen Brown was there. He's a 2023 receiver. I think Holden Stace was there. At least he had a thing he sent out of like the kick at the end. So I think he was at the game too. Actually, Johnny Maloney said that. Paul Rose says 316 is where I currently live in southern, originally from Southern Indiana. Made the design as a play on SIG. Yes. Okay. Good stuff. I have 2 SIGs. I have my carry is a 320X compact, and my wife's carry is the P365. So big fan. Sandy Grove says his is the 228 and a 226 is a close second. I have not fired either one of those. I've only ever shot the P320X compact that I have in the 365. I haven't fired any of the others. So I think she was just talking to my wife actually about wanting to go to the range. That's what I got my SIG hat for, is to be my range hat. Andrew Goss has the 365. That's my wife has. Actually, I bought her a new holster, and it's got the Constitution on it. It's like a We the People. It's got a really cool thing on it. And so, but I've actually been carrying her holster lately because I don't have a holster that has a light on for the light. And so I have a light on my 320. My 320X compact, and I don't like taking it on and off all the time because it's also my pistol that's kind of by my bed at night for home defense, and I don't like constantly taking that on and off. And she hasn't got her carry permit yet, so she can't. I got it for her for Christmas, and she was supposed to get her carry permit by now, but it's now September, and she's yet to get her carry permit. So since she can't carry it, I've been carrying it because it's a really, really nice. It's a really good carry weapon, no question about that. And I'm okay saying it on this one. How much does a meaningless interception impact Cohn's rating? So actually, that's a great question, and I can figure that out right now. So based on what he did, so he had 35 attempts, 26 completions for 366 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 pick. And that meant his quarterback rating was 194.13, which is really good. If you take that attempt off and you go 26 of 34 with no interceptions, actually, let's keep the 35 there and just say it was batted down. Then that would have been a 199.84, so a 5-point difference. If he doesn't make the attempt at all, and it's just 26 of 34, then it's a 205.72. So without the Hail Mary at all, it's a 10-plus point difference. With the Hail Mary, had it been batted down, it was a 5-point difference. So good question. Nolan says, I was really hoping to be wrong about Jeff Quinn. Everyone has been talking about his shortcomings, and Sunday did nothing but throw fuel on the fire. What does he have to do to right the ship? He has to do what he did in 2018, honestly. In 2018, they stunk the first 3 games of the year. And they started to get better. Well, first 2 games for sure. They weren't great in pass pro against Vanderbilt, but they ran the ball well that game. And then against Wake Forest and Stanford, they looked really good. He's got to do that. He's got to get them kind of just continue to get them better and better each week to where by midseason they're playing well. I think that's what he needs to do. D-Rock, how many timeouts does the team have in overtime? How many did Norvell use on Sunday in the overtime versus Notre Dame? I thought a team only had 1. Did he use a timeout first kicker and or? You have 1. You have 1. I believe it's like 1 each possession. That's actually I'm unsure of that one. But I think you have 1 each possession. I don't think it's either that or it's 1 per overtime. But I'm gonna have to look up that rule. That's a good question, D-Rock. A lot of people didn't like the officiating, and I agree. The 365 is nice. I agree. Paul Rose says, I have a first-gen P320 and use the P365 as my concealed carry. I have not shot the 320. Isn't that what the military just adopted too? I think they're using the 320s. It's like an M17, but it's the for the military, it's the 320. I haven't shot the full length one. I've only shot the X compact version of that. Big on 81 every year. People think first game Notre Dame opponents are going to be good, and they usually always suck. I don't think Florida State's going to suck, though. All right. Andrew Goss says, I bought it over a Glock. I knew I wanted it when I shot my friends and was dead on. So when I first bought my concealed carry, it was last summer. I'd never fired a pistol before. I'd never owned a gun. I was always pro Second Amendment, but never had a weapon before. And for last year, I decided to do that for a lot of reasons. But I shot like 5 different. Well, I shot a M&P Shield. I shot the CV-10, I think is what it's called. I shot a Glock 19. I shot the SIG P320X compact, and there was one other that I shot. I thought I was going to get a Glock. My friends in the military, and I have friends that are like one of my former players I talked to about it. He has a Glock. He works for Border Patrol, I believe. I have a buddy of mine that I played college ball with that teaches people self-defense and shooting. I think he has a Glock. So I thought I was going to get the Glock, but when I shot it, I hated it. I don't like the extra curved handle. The SIG was actually my 4th. Like when I ranked it beforehand, was probably 3rd or 4th on the list. I thought the M&P Shield was the other one. I didn't like it either. Buddy of mine, Matt D in the show, told me about he is a M&P Shield guy, I believe. But when I shot the SIG, it just felt great. I mean, it just felt, it was the recoil control was easy. It felt great in my hand. I mean, I was accurate with it despite having never really fired pistols before. I hated the Glock. I didn't like the feel of it. I didn't like how I shot it. I really didn't. I didn't like it at all. See you, Chad. Thanks for joining the show. CCC asks, Coach, are you concerned about any part of Toledo? I'm not concerned from a win-loss standpoint. I think their run game is going to be a good test for Notre Dame. I think they can run the ball effectively. Bryant Koback is going to be probably one of the 3 or 4 better backs Notre Dame is going to face this year. I think their O-line's veteran. I think they should have a pretty decent offensive line. If Notre Dame can shut down the run on Saturday, I'll feel good about that. No question about it. Lucky Lefty podcast. So here we go. So he used a timeout to challenge and kept the timeout with a successful challenge. That's it. That makes total sense. Colby says, who did you have the most fun watching on Sunday? The receivers, I would say. I was really, because we thought they could be good. We really didn't know, but watching them get open as much as they did, that was encouraging for me. It really was. That was the other one I shot, Mace. I shot a Springfield, and I did not like it. Was it the Hellcat? And I did not like it. I can't remember. Fatfish, how do you feel about Bo Bauer only having 1 tackle? I didn't. I didn't think Bo played great. Honestly, I didn't. But part of it too is he was stunting a lot, and a lot of times the stunts were kind of taking him away from the ball. But I didn't think he played really well. Old Grim says Glock 43 and a We the People holster. So that's the holster I bought. Grim is I bought it for Angela, and I think it's upstairs, but yeah, it was you can kind of get the We the People holsters, and you can kind of get them with the different like you can get like American flag, blue line, all those type of things. You can get all types of different things in them. And I decided to go with the We the People thing. The Second Amendment thing, or the Constitution one, is the one that I got. So I decided to go with that. But I was going to get a We the People one before, and I didn't. I decided to go for me. I have a G code for my holster for my carry is G code. It's actually a military company, so I actually use that one for mine, and I really like it. But for Angela's, I actually got a We the People one for that one too. So, but yeah, I liked it, and it fits really well. Actually, my G code is really good. I do like that holster, but for so far, the one that I got for her, the We the People, it's really tight. I mean, you can pick that thing upside down and it fits. So this is actually the one that I got. So that's the holster that I got for Angela. So, but that's the 365. So that's the holster I got for it. So really, really, really like it. So, all right. So here we go. I think that is it. I think that's it for the questions there. He's also a 360. I went to I felt I probably would have got XL if it was just for me, because it's a little longer, but I got to say, I'm glad I didn't, because I really like the feel of her 365. We got the 365 normal because the holster is for her. I mean, the gun was for her, for Angela. And I mean, I got it for Christmas, but I didn't surprise her with it. I let her go with me and made sure that she was comfortable with it. And she shoots with me all the time. She shoots mine, but now when we go, she gets to shoot hers, which is really cool. Stephen D. Kish, Irish Breakdown is the best. Brian is honest and gives it to the fans straight. He is raising the bar for Notre Dame media competitors. I appreciate that. That's saying a lot, because there's a lot of people that I respect on the Notre Dame beat. And it's actually kind of cool, because when I got to the hotel on Saturday, I'm walking up and Tim O'Malley's there from Irish Illustrated. He's going into a room right beside mine. Tim Priester was a floor above. We went and had lunch, but it was good seeing those guys. But there's a lot of people on the beat that I respect. So to say that means quite a lot. Quite a lot. And Fat Fish says, if it says Jack Cohn only played 3 games in 2017, he not redshirt. He did not. He played 5 games that year. So he did not redshirt. Plus, in 2017, there was no that rule was not in place yet. If you played at all, you ran out of eligibility. I don't think that rule started, I believe, until 2018, I believe. So there you go. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The military version is the M17, right? It's the design is the 320. That was the design that they bought, but theirs is called a M17. I thought that's what I said. I may have said it backwards, but that's what I meant to say. So appreciate the clarification if I did, in fact, get that wrong. All right, so that is going to be it. Before you leave, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. We will be back tomorrow to start previewing Toledo. And I appreciate everybody's patience as we kind of take this Florida State breakdown a little deeper into the week. Have some grades on the website. I already have Jack Cohn's grades out. It's got a breakdown. I'm actually going to show you what I got, because this is something that we're going to do every week with Jack Cohn and whoever the quarterback is. But I think this is going to be a really cool feature for it. So I'm going to go here. That is a commercial. And so I go through, I give the positives, I give the negatives from the game, and I'm always going to have both. I give my grade, and then I'm going to have this passing chart. So essentially what this does is this is going to break down where the ball went. Now, I do it different from Pro Football Focus. Pro Football Focus has a thing where it's basically inside the numbers is the middle of the field. I think that is not the way to do it. So mine is basically from about 2 yards outside the hash to the sideline is left, 2 yards to the sideline, 2 yards outside the hash to the right is the right, and then middle of the field is basically 2 yards outside the hash to inside. So it kind of breaks it up into thirds. And this is his passing chart. So, for example, he went 2 for 4 for 52 yards, a touchdown, and a pick to the deep left. So that's to the left, outside the hash, 20 yards or more down the field. So that's essentially what that stands for. And this is 11 to 19, 1 to 9, and then behind the line of scrimmage. So you'll get that kind of stuff. I'll have other things like we'll have running back efficiency numbers. We will have a lot of good stuff. So make sure you check all that out. I'll have all that stuff coming up today. So for Vince, I'm Brian. Thanks for being with us today. Enjoy the show. Be back tomorrow, same time, same bat channel, 12:30, starting to break down Toledo. So everybody have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you again very, very soon.